Okay, the NFC East. What a division this has been for many, many years. I remember being the offensive coordinator of the Eagles when I first started coaching. I had to stand back on the sidelines because there was a lot of guys getting hit. But anyways, the Philadelphia Eagles are the defending champions of the East. They went 11-6. They were the only team in the East to have a winning record. The Cowboys were 7-9-1. The Washington Commanders 5-12. And the New York Giants fell to 4-13. What the hell's going on in this division? In the division, the Eagles were 3-3. Dallas was 4-2. The Commanders were 3-3. And the New York Giants were 2-4 in the East. Very important, you look at these point differentials. The New York Giants were minus 58. Washington was minus 95. Dallas was minus 40. And Philadelphia at plus 54, the only team in the East with a winning point differential. The Eagles have won the NFC East 5 out of the last 9 years. The Cowboys last won it in 2023. They also won it in 2021. And the last time the Commanders won the NFC East was 2020, and they did that with a 7-9 record. That's weird. The New York Giants, they have not won the East since 2011, the last time they won the Super Bowl. Nick Sirianni returns in Philadelphia for his 6th season. They won the Super Bowl in 2024. Brian Schottenheimer returns for his 2nd season in Dallas. Dan Quinn returns for his 3rd season in Washington. And we have one new head coach. John Harbaugh comes to New York from Baltimore, where he won the Super Bowl in 2012. He was with Baltimore for 18 seasons. I think he's going to bring some interesting juice to the New York Giants, and they need it. You know, Harbaugh was a Philadelphia Eagle assistant in 1998 to 2007 under Andy Reid, so it's kind of cool. You see him start his career in the East and end his career in the East. It should be interesting. I like to watch DraftKings, see what they think, because they're a lot smarter than me. And these odds are subject to change, but the way I see it right now, DraftKings thinks Philadelphia is 16-1 to win the Super Bowl. Dallas is 25-1. They think highly of the Cowboys. Washington 65-1, and the G-men are 70-1. So think about that if you want to do anything with DraftKings, picking a Super Bowl winner. We got 3 new offensive coordinators in the NFC East. The Philadelphia Eagles are turning it over to Sean Mannion, a 30-year-old former quarterback. Hell's bells. He was on the Lions practice squad in 2023, but he'll be calling the plays for the Philadelphia Eagles. That's where my career started. I was about the same age. I had a guy yelling at me saying, "Hey, Gruden, if your IQ was 1 point less, you'd be a plant." So, Sean Mannion, if you're listening to me, just showcase your mental toughness. You'll do great. Washington hired David Blau. He's only 34 years old. Hell, he was on the Vikings and Seahawks practice squad as a player in 2023. But he comes from the Ben Johnson tree. Expect to see some of that Detroit Lion offense, Chicago Bear offense in the nation's capital. The New York Giants hired Matt Nagy to be their OC. Matt Nagy, a longtime Andy Reid assistant. He was the former head coach of the Bears. And Clayton Adams, he's the only offensive coordinator that returns. And I know the Cowboys are very happy to have Clayton Adams working with the offensive line and Brian Schottenheimer. When I think of the NFC East, I think of defense, man. Reggie White, Buddy Ryan, the New York Giants, good God. The Washington Redskins under Joe Gibbs, the great defensive teams that you have seen in the East for years and years and years. How about going up against the Cowboys with Charles Haley and Dion and Woodson? Shit, that was a tough division. But the NFC East, they have one good scoring defense, and that was Philadelphia. They finished 5th in the league in scoring defense. But look at the rest of these defenses. I mean, the New York Giants were 26th, very disappointing on defense. The Washington Commanders, good Lord, they were 27th in scoring defense, and there was nobody worse than the Dallas Cowboys, 32nd. That's the facts of these defenses in the East. Therefore, we have new defensive coordinators as well. Not only do we have 3 new offensive coordinators, we got 3 new defensive coordinators. The New York Giants are bringing in Denard Wilson. He was the defensive coordinator for the Titans the last 2 years. He's in charge in New York. The Commanders hired Durante Jones, who is the pass game coordinator of the Minnesota Vikings. He'll be the D coordinator for the Washington Commanders. And the Dallas Cowboys, they're bringing in Christian Parker, the former secondary coach, pass game coordinator of the Eagles. Parker's a first-time coordinator. Jones is a first-time coordinator. And Coach Wilson in New York is going to be in his third year as a coordinator. These are young guys. And Philly returns Vic Fangio, who's going into his 25th season either as a head coach or a coordinator. I say advantage Eagles on this. The NFC East is one of the very few divisions where you have established franchise quarterbacks. The Philadelphia Eagles have Jalen Hurts, the Super Bowl MVP of 2024. You know, Jalen Hurts is going on his 6th offensive coordinator in 7 years. What the hell? I lasted 3 years in Philly as the OC. Is that a world record or something? But the Eagles were underwhelming last year. They were 24th in the league in offense, and they lost A.J. Brown in the offseason. It'll be interesting to see how Hurts and new offensive coordinator Sean Mannion hit it off. The Cowboys have Dak Prescott. I think Prescott's the best passer when healthy in this division. I don't even think it's close. His last 4 seasons that he has played healthy, he's thrown for over 4,000 yards and over 30 touchdowns. This guy has to stay healthy. The big thing with Dak is he's only won 2 career playoff games. I know that pisses him off. And Jaden Daniels, the Rookie of the Year in 2024, he took the Commanders to the NFC Championship game. He's healthy. He's returning. He's got a new OC we talked about, but he missed 10 games last year, and Washington fell apart. He had too many injuries, knee, hamstring, elbow. He's got to quit running around so much and start winning in the pocket. And Jackson Dart, I told you this guy had a reckless playing style. He was in the concussion tent 5 times in 10 weeks, and he missed 2 games because of the concussion. He is critical for the Giants to have success. Another thing in the NFC East is there are some very good running games. You have to really concentrate on this. The Washington Commanders were 4th in the league rushing the football. Heck, the New York Giants were 5th. Not a lot of people realize that. And the Dallas Cowboys were 9th. The only team in the NFC East who didn't have a top 10 running game was Philly, and they got Saquon Barkley in this offensive line. The Eagles fell to 18th last year rushing the football, but I think all these teams in the East have solid franchise quarterbacks. They have very good running games, and they got some defenses in the East that are very vulnerable. Lastly, from a schedule standpoint, everybody in the NFC East, as you know, play each other twice during the regular season. They're also going to play the NFC West. So these teams are all going to play the Rams, the Seahawks, and the 49ers. Good luck. And they also play Arizona. They're also going to play the AFC South. That is the Houston Texans, the Jaguars, the Colts, and the Tennessee Titans. And you know how much I hate overseas games? Well, guess what? The Philadelphia Eagles, they get to play in London. Woohoo! And the Washington Commanders get to play in London. Woohoo! Dallas Cowboys, they get to play in Rio. Where the hell is Rio, Jake?
Brazil.
It's in Brazil. You guys see Brazil in a soccer tournament? And the New York Giants, fortunately for them, they don't have to go overseas. They get to stay close to home and get this Giant football team on the roll. There's some quick facts about the NFC East. 3 of the first-round picks in the East came out of Ohio State. Arvell Reese to the Giants, Sonny Styles to the Commanders, and Caleb Downs went to the Dallas Cowboys. That'll be cool to watch too. Let's get into this division, starting with the Dallas Cowboys. I love Jason Witten. Okay, let's talk about the Dallas Cowboys. Top of mind before we get into the offense and the defense. This was a wildly inconsistent football team last year. Brian Schottenheimer, the head coach, knows that. They were dazzling at times on offense, but dreadful at times on defense. They were 6-5-1 in the playoff hunt, but they finished 1-4. The offense wasn't hitting on all cylinders at the end of the season when they needed them the most. And the defense in those 4 losses gave up 34, 44, 34, 34. How the hell are you going to win like that? And they fell apart, and they finished 7-9-1. But they have a very good head coach, Brian Schottenheimer. I have heard the Cowboys praising his leadership, his presence, and his ability to get through and get along and develop Dak Prescott to a higher and higher level. I give Schottenheimer credit. You know, you got to manage all these peaks and valleys during the season, and boy, did he have to deal with a lot of them. Remember, they traded Micah Parsons, their superstar pass rusher, to Green Bay right before the kickoff of the season. I mean, try explaining that to your team. And then the tragic loss of Marshawn Nealon, young defensive lineman. He passes away. You got to navigate through that tough water as well. And then, you know, you got to deal with some discipline with CeeDee Lamb and Pickens before the Monday night game. I don't know, you got to set them down. It's really not easy to do, but I thought he did a good job of navigating the ship. He's creating a really good culture from all the people I've talked to. Now the next step is kicking the door down and winning big in Dallas, because that's really what it's all about. Let's take a look at who's coming and who's going for this Dallas Cowboy football team. Starting with the draft, they had 2 first-round picks. They went defense. Caleb Downs, outstanding, versatile defender at Ohio State. You're going to see him play multiple spots. Then they took Malachi Lawrence. Who the hell is Malachi Lawrence, everybody was saying? Well, he comes out of Central Florida. What he did in his off-season workouts was astonishing, and it caught everybody's attention. Plus, one of the Cowboys' defensive line coaches coached Lawrence at Central Florida, so they feel like they got 2 big-time players where they need them the most on defense. Then in the 3rd round, they drafted Jayshon Barham. He played 2 years at Maryland. He played 2 years at Michigan. He's the perfect hybrid defender for this scheme that their new defensive coordinator is going to run. They took Drew Shelton in the 4th round, an offensive tackle out of Penn State. The biggest area of need, I think, on the Cowboy offense is both tackle positions. They've got to solve those mysteries. Maybe Shelton could be the answer. They took a corner out of Florida, Devin Moore, in the 4th round, and they took another defensive lineman, L.T. Overton, from Alabama in the 4th round, and they finished up with Anthony Smith, a wide receiver out of East Carolina. So they had a very defensive draft for obvious reasons. But look who's coming. New defensive coordinator, Christian Parker. They brought in Sam Howell at quarterback. Keep an eye on Howell. He's going to battle Joe Milton for the backup quarterback spot. They brought in a couple veteran receivers, Tyler Johnson, Marquez Valdez-Scantling. I don't know why those guys would sign with Dallas. Dallas is loaded at wide receiver, you know? They brought in Matt Hennessy, a backup center. He'll come in and compete with Beebe, but I do think you got to have a backup center. And then on defense, look at all the players they brought in. 3 defensive linemen. Otito Ogbonnia from the LA Chargers. They brought in Jonathan Bullard, a D lineman from the Bears. They brought in Rashawn Gary, an ex-defensive end outside backer for the Packers. They brought in 2 defensive backs from the Rams, Kobe Durant, corner. They brought in Darian Kendrick, who can play in the slot. They brought in 2 safeties. Hell, I love Jalen Thompson. They brought him in from the Arizona Cardinals. They gave him a lot of money, man. And they got P.J. Locke, who's a good safety from the Denver Broncos. They brought in 2 linebackers. Watch out for D. Winters, over 100 tackles with the 49ers. They brought in Curtis Robinson to compete and add depth. That's a lot of new starters, potentially on defense, that they brought in. Well, who's going? They let go Matt Eberflus, their defensive coordinator. In a lot of ways, he was a scapegoat for some of the play that happened between the lines. They also let Will Grier, quarterback, go. They obviously replaced him with Sam Howell. They let running back Miles Sanders go. They let a good receiver, Jalen Tolbert, walk. And obviously, the defense is where they lost a lot of players. Defensive linemen, Osa Odigizua, traded to the 49ers. Solomon Thomas, gone. Jadeveon Clowney had 8.5 sacks. He led Dallas. He's still a free agent. And Dante Fowler's out of town. They also let go linebackers, Kenneth Murray, Jack Sanborn, Logan Wilson. That's a whole new linebacking core. And in the secondary, they've let Donovan Wilson remain on the street, a safety man. They let Trevon Diggs go last year. He went to Green Bay. The Packers let him go. A lot of turnover on this Cowboy roster. New defensive coordinator, Christian Parker. Keep an eye on this guy. He's been around. He's been with Vic Fangio in Denver. He's been with Fangio in Philly. He's developed some young players, Cooper DeJean, Quinyon Mitchell, and I think that's where the secondary is going to improve the most because of the day-to-day coaching they're getting from Christian Parker. On offense, the Cowboys have 11 starters returning. That's uncommon in the National Football League. Perhaps you're going to see 7 or 8 new starters on defense, but the keys for Dallas, let's be honest, they have a winnable division. They were 4-2 in the division last year with this defense. They got to keep Dak Prescott healthy. Say it with me, Clay.
Got to keep Dak healthy.
Fuck, you got to keep him healthy. They're dead without Dak Prescott. Number 2, this defense has to be much improved. Hell's bells. They had too many blowouts last year. They lost 6 times by over 10 points. Come on. And where's the home field advantage? I mean, I keep hearing about this great stadium. They went 8-0 in 2023. But when Green Bay kicked their ass in the playoffs, they haven't been the same since. They're 6-10-1 at home. Maybe they should go play in Rio de Janeiro or London. They have 6 night games this year. That's tough on a coaching staff. That's tough on a team. And they open the season at home at night against the Giants. They are going to be challenged with this schedule, especially early in week 3 through 5. They play 3 games in 12 days. Who put this schedule together? They play the Baltimore Ravens in Rio de Janeiro. Then they come back and play Houston, then on Thursday night against Tampa. And then late in the year, they got another gauntlet starting on Thanksgiving. They play the Philadelphia Eagles at home. Then they're on the road Monday Night Football at Seattle. Good God, then they play the Rams. So let's go Cowboys. Let's get into this team. They've got an excellent kicker, Brandon Aubrey. The Cowboys made him the highest paid kicker ever. This past April, he's the first kicker to make $7 million a year. Maybe he can buy me a beer sometime, I don't know. But Aubrey has made 6 field goals of over 60 yards. That's the most in NFL history. Do you know Brandon Aubrey was 36 for 42 last year on field goals, and all 6 misses were over 51 yards? This guy's awesome, man. They also have an excellent return man, Gavante Turpin. He's been to 3 Pro Bowls. And do you know Caleb Downs, their first-round pick, returned 10 punts in his college career, 2 of them for touchdowns? That's a hell of a football player. The turnover ratio, last thing. You got to get it straight. It was awful. I put it in green. Just 12 takeaways. 6 interceptions by their defense. That's the lowest amount of interceptions in Dallas Cowboy history. And they turned the ball over 21 times. They were -9. That's 29th in football. There you have it. That's the top of mind. Let's get into this Cowboy offense. Okay, let's take a look at this Dallas Cowboy offense. How about them Cowboys? You like this shirt, Jake?
Yep.
Jason Witten, I got to coach him in his final season. This Cowboy offense, a lot of excitement. Brian Schottenheimer calls the plays. Clayton Adams returns as the offensive coordinator. He does a great job coordinating this run game, coaching the O-line. They have all their players back. And this Cowboy offense, think about it. They have a 4,500-yard passer in Prescott, a 1,200-yard rusher in Javonte Williams, and they got 2 1,000-yard receivers, George Pickens and CeeDee Lamb, and they're one of 2 teams that has a tight end with over 80 catches and 8 touchdowns. How's that sound, Jake?
Awesome.
They're explosive, they're balanced, and they're efficient, man. 48% of their drives end up scoring points. That's second in the league. And do you know this? 23% of their drives end in a punt. That's the best in football. This Cowboy offense, they move the ball, they get big plays, and they do a nice job. 2 areas to improve. Number 1, that red zone touchdown percentage has to improve. 57% touchdowns, that's 18th in the league. Not good enough for a team with this type of firepower. They also got to get better, as we talked about in the turnover ratio. They turned it over 21 times. They got to reduce that number. They got to get more touchdowns. Brandon Aubrey, 36 field goals. Let's kick 26 this year and get 10 more touchdowns. This is a high-priced offense. You know, when I was calling plays, I wished I had a high-priced offense like this. I mean, Dak Prescott makes $60 million. That's pretty good, eh, Jake? Yep. They also have a wide receiver, CeeDee Lamb, making $34 million. They just franchise tagged George Pickens. He's making $27.3 million. And then they got a lot of money in the rest of this offense. Hell, they got $181 million committed to the offensive side of the ball. It's kind of like this NIL world, you know? You get what you pay for, I guess. The biggest improvement last year in this offense was the run game. And again, I want to give Clayton Adams a lot of credit. You know, a lot of these line coaches, run game coordinator type guys, they spend all their time with the running game and pass protection. You know, Brian Schottenheimer has had Clayton Adams installing the passing plays in the offseason. A lot of line coaches that I've been around, they'd throw up if they had to install the passes. This guy is really improving. I think he's being fast-tracked to be a great head coach in the NFL. But Javonte Williams, they took a one-year flyer on this guy. He was hurt. He was a disappointment to some degree in Denver. They give him a one-year, $3 million contract, and Williams catches 35 passes. He rushes for 1,200 yards, scores 11 touchdowns. And what he does between the tackles, man, is awesome. I used to love watching Emmett between the tackles. Zeke Elliott between the tackles. 62% of Williams' runs are between the tackles, and he averages 4.8 yards and 8 touchdowns between the tackles. He moves a pile. He's vicious, and I like this guy. They gave him a 3-year extension. Good for him. But it is still a pass-first offense. You should throw the ball with this tight end, these receivers, and this quarterback. 59% pass last year, 61% pass in 2024. I still expect the Cowboys to let it rip. But you got to ask yourself, how do we stop CeeDee Lamb, Pickens, and the veteran quarterback Prescott? Well, a lot of teams start playing cover two. They roll up on Pickens. They roll up on CeeDee Lamb. They got help over the top, but it really softens the box. And that's why Javonte Williams, he's got to continue to take advantage of some of these soft boxes, and they're going to have to use their tight end Ferguson even more against some of these split safety coverages. Schottenheimer uses a lot of 11 personnel, 1 tight end, 1 back, and 3 receivers. Pickens, Lamb, and the emerging Ryan Flournoy. He wears number 19, fantasy football fans. 40 catches, 475 yards, a lot of damage in the slot. 2 great receivers and a really good young emerging third receiver. They also have Ferguson, so it's hard to really gang up on the running plays. And when you try to get soft to cover all these pass receivers, they're vulnerable against the run. They're in the shotgun about 76% of the time. The Cowboys will get into some 21 personnel, 2 back sets with 1 tight end because they have a fullback I really like. This guy's name is Hunter Lepke, and he'll also be used as a tailback in some short yardage, 4-minute situations. So being able to use a 2-back set with the 11 personnel, Dallas can attack your sub defense, they can attack your base defense, and they can be relentless getting after your ass. I like that. Dak Prescott is the straw that stirs the drink. We can argue all we want about who the best quarterback in the NFL is. Let me tell you this, Prescott, when healthy, he's one of the best. This guy's done a hell of a job. 4,500 yards passing, 67.3% complete, 30 touchdowns, 10 picks last year. He's going to be 33 years old as he enters his 11th training camp with the Dallas Cowboys. I mean, he led the NFL with 404 completions. He doesn't care who he throws the ball to. The question with Prescott is, can he stay healthy in back-to-back seasons? Cowboy fans remember, in 2020, he missed 11 games with the ankle. In 2022, he missed 5 games with that injury to his thumb. In 2024, he missed 9 games with the hamstring. And this is 2026. Cross your fingers. We got to keep Dak Prescott healthy to win the East. I love Prescott. He was on the Gruden's QB Class show years ago out of Mississippi State. He puts a lot into this, man. A lot of hard work and effort. He's always trying to improve. and try to get a winning edge. Better footwork, better at the line of scrimmage in terms of audibling. He's looking for an edge, and Dak Prescott might lead the league in effort. I love that from the quarterback position. He needs 5 touchdown passes to be the all-time touchdown pass leader in the Cowboys' history. He might get that on opening day against the New York Giants because he owns the Giants. And if he doesn't get it against them, he's going to get it against the Commanders in week 2. You know he's thrown 31 touchdowns against the Giants and 32 against the Commanders? Those aren't very good secondaries either. You better look out. Is this the best wide receiver duo in the NFL? I know a lot of Cincinnati Bengals are saying, nah, man, we got Higgins and Chase. Let me tell you, these 2 receivers, Pickens and Lamb, they combined for 168 catches and 2,500 yards and 12 touchdowns last year. They are outstanding. And they got Ryan Flournoy, I just talked about. He had 40 for 475. They're loaded. Can the Cowboys keep both of these receivers after this season? I mean, this is 17% of your salary cap space is in these 2 wide receivers. Heck, if I'm with the Cowboys, I say as long as they're great, I'm keeping them both. It's hard to find guys that can do this much damage to a defense. But how do you cover them? When it's one-on-one coverage, Prescott looks over to George Pickens, and it's a hand signal, man. He has over 500 yards receiving, Pickens does, against one-on-one coverage. As soon as Prescott sees one-on-one over there with George Pickens, you know where the ball's going. The biggest challenge I think the Cowboys are going to have is with their offensive line. They've got a lot of investments in this group. And I think the strength of this team is the inside 3. I love Cooper Beebe at center, love Tyler Smith if he's the left guard, and I love last year's first-round pick, Tyler Booker at right guard. That's like a law firm, man. Smith, Beebe, and Booker. If those 3 are inside together and healthy, that's the best interior offensive line in football. But what about the offensive tackle positions? Last year, it was a turnstile at left tackle. Tyler Guyton, former #1 pick from Oklahoma, got hurt in training camp. They turned it to Nate Thomas, a 7th-round pick. Both of those young tackles have struggled, and at the end of last season, they took their Pro Bowl guard, Tyler Smith, and moved him out there to left tackle. So we have to keep a close eye on what's going on at left tackle in training camp with the Cowboys. Guyton and Thomas. And don't forget, they drafted a 4th-round pick, Shelton from Penn State. He might get into the mix. But they do not want to move Tyler Smith to left tackle because I don't think it strengthens them. I think it weakens them at 2 positions. And at right tackle, Terrence Steele, since he hurt that knee, I think it was at the end of 2022, he hasn't been as good as he once was, but I'm hoping he rounds back into form. When you look at Pro Football Focus, and I'm not saying they have all the answers, but from a statistical ranking, Steele at right tackle was 51st out of 84. Guyton was 67th out of 84 tackles, and Nate Thomas was 83rd out of 84th. So we got to do a lot better job at both tackle positions. But let's take a look at this offensive line in general. They do have some depth. I think getting Hennessy in free agency will give them another backup center in case Beebe does go down. Remember, Cooper Beebe went down, missed weeks 3 through 8 last year, and it could be a significant problem if you don't have a qualified backup center. TJ Bass, he can fill in at left guard. He's a good player. So they do have some depth with Trevor Keegan and obviously drafting Shelton. There's some young linemen in the mix. But keep an eye on the O-line, particularly at left tackle. What the hell's going on? The tight end position is a very good position for the Cowboys, and it allows them to run the ball, and it allows them to do a lot of creative things in pass protection and from a route running standpoint. We all know Jake Ferguson, former 4th-round pick, caught a lot of passes, 82 catches, 8 touchdowns, but he only averaged 7.3 yards per catch. That's not very much. We need more big plays from Ferguson. Luke Schoonmaker, former 2nd-round pick out of Michigan. He's been somewhat of a disappointment, just 14 catches last season. But keep an eye on Brevin Spann-Ford. I like this guy. An undrafted kid. He had 9 catches for 90 yards, scores his first touchdown. But with these 3 tight ends, it allows Schottenheimer to use 13 personnel, a little 22 personnel, and they can create a lot of mismatches with these receivers, creating a ton of different formations. The running back position, we talked about Javonte Williams, what a bargain find he was last year. They are in a situation where they got to find a backup running back. Is it going to be Malik Davis? Davis played pretty well last year, surprisingly, 52 carries, 250 yards. They expected a lot more from their 5th-round pick, Jaden Blue, out of Texas. He was inactive 12 times last year. He only played 78 snaps. Blue can fly, but he's got to improve in pass protection, handling the audibles, being more consistent. Blue versus Malik Davis will be a big story in training camp for the Cowboys. Don't forget, I know Brian Schottenheimer would love to use Hunter Lepke more in 2026. This guy needs to be on the field. But again, the wide receivers are a key part of this team. And at quarterback, in the preseason, who the hell is the backup going to be to Dak Prescott? Is it going to be Sam Howell? He's a journeyman. He's been bouncing around the league. Is it going to be Joe Milton? Those 2 guys have really got to showcase their stuff and gain the confidence of this entire roster in case something does happen to Dak. But what an offense, what a scheme, and what a season it should be if they can resolve the left tackle position and keep Dak healthy. All right, let's talk about this Dallas Cowboy defense. You know, they got a new defensive coordinator, Christian Parker. Last year, we all know the statistics. 32nd in scoring defense, 30th in total defense, 32nd against the pass, 23rd against the run. Think about this. 511 points allowed. That's the most in the NFL. 511 points, that's the most allowed in the history of the Dallas Cowboys. That's got to piss them off, man. They were last in the NFL on 3rd down. They gave up 47.3% conversions, and there just aren't enough splash plays. Where's prime time? Where's Darren Woodson? Where's Charles Haley? Only 35 sacks, only 12 takeaways, 6 interceptions, the fewest in franchise history. Poor communication. You saw it on tape. They had a hard time lining up sometimes. Blown coverages, bad run fits, poor screen entry, bad angles to the football, and missed tackles. Everybody go like this. Ah! That's how I felt watching it. So they decided we're going to make massive changes, all right? And they brought in a new defensive coordinator, but let's get better results. Let's see if that happens. They're going from a 3-4 defense in their base to a 4-3 defense. And they're going to bring in this Christian Parker from Philly. He is, I am told, very smart, very hard worker, and he's an excellent communicator. And when you're a young coordinator, communication is the biggest thing I think you got to prove to everybody. You got to communicate with the players. You got to communicate when the head coach starts yelling at you. You got to communicate with Will McClay, the personnel director. Tell him what kind of players you want. And you got to communicate with the owner. I remember Al Davis tried to throw me out of the airplane one time. Sometimes it's tough. But this young man, Christian Parker, I am told, is very good at that. You know, defenses are complicated in the NFL. Whether you like it or not, you got to be able to teach your system, motivate, and sometimes challenge and discipline your guys if they're not concentrating. But the Cowboy defense has got to play faster, they got to communicate better, and hell's bells, they got to execute a lot better. So they went out and they signed or traded for 7 veterans. Then they used their first 3 draft choices on defense, and they let a lot of guys go. And in fairness to Matt Eberflus, some of the guys they let go, based on what they put on tape last year, they may never play in the NFL again. It was that bad. I think Christian Parker, his number one thing is to fix this secondary. You remember last year when the season started, they had let Jordan Lewis, their nickel, go to Jacksonville. That was a big loss. Then Hooker at safety, he got hurt. Then Deron Bland, he hasn't returned from his form from a couple years ago. He gets hurt. Then Trevon Diggs, I don't know what happened to him. And then Donovan Wilson, hell, he can only play near the line of scrimmage. They were really handicapped in the back end. Kalen Carson got hurt. Hell, I'm looking out there at Marquise Bell and Janaea Thomas. I don't know these players. So they went out and they really revamped their secondary and their secondary coach. This is going to be a system that resembles what Vic Fangio does in Philadelphia. It's going to be multiple. Going to be a lot of split safety coverages. They're going to stay on top. They're not going to give up big plays. I can promise you they're going to get better at that. They're going to have a detailed underneath coverage, how they handle slots, backs out of the backfield, and tight ends. And they're going to disguise coverages, man. It's going to look like split, but it's going to rotate into some single high coverages. It's going to look like single high, and it's going to get back to a split safety. They're very good. They'll play a 3-4 in base. They'll play a 4-3. They'll play a 42 nickel, and they'll play a big nickel defense. They have a blitz package. It's very good, and they bluff the blitzes and don't blitz sometimes. So they do a great job of mixing it up. So when I say they're multiple, you can see they do a lot of different things. I would expect about 70% zone, whether it's 3 deep, 4 under, 2 deep, 5 under, 4 deep, 3 under. They're going to play a lot of zone and about 30% man. Whether they play 3 deep, 2 deep, man to man, or whatever they play, they have some versatile secondary players. That's why they went out and got Jalen Thompson from the Arizona Cardinals. That's why they drafted Caleb Downs from Ohio State. Guys that can play nickel, guys that can play free or strong, come into the box and play as a dime linebacker. That versatility alone will allow the Cowboys to play different structures and use different disguises. But if I were Coach Parker, I would show the big plays the Cowboys gave up, because there are some players that are returning from that defense. I mean, they gave up 14 passing plays of over 40 yards. They gave up 64 running plays of over 10 yards. Say it again. God. Quarterbacks saw the Cowboys, and they lit Dallas up. 68.5 complete, 8.1 yards per pass, 35 touchdown passes, 109.6 QB rating against Dallas last year. Hell, Matt Stafford won the MVP, and his rating was 109.2. That's how bad you got lit up. And you only had 6 picks yourselves. So these numbers got to be showcased, I think, daily to piss these guys off and eliminate these problems from a year ago. I think it all starts with the defensive line of the Cowboys. Yes, they lost Micah Parsons, and how many times did you have to hear that last year? A lot. They don't have Micah Parsons. I don't think they have a known frontline star, but they can still have a good pass rush unit if they do it together. They're going to need all their pieces to work together to replace Parsons and get this pass rush humming again. Let's take a look at the front four. Kenny Clark, who came over from Green Bay in the trade for Parsons, I think is going to be a centerpiece in Coach Parker's defense. He wears number 97. He had 3 sacks, 30 pressures, 8 hits on the quarterback. He is a good player. He saw about 48% double teams last year. Quinnen Williams, he comes over from the Jets. He had 12 sacks in 2022. But in 2023, 24, and 25, where the hell's all the sacks? You know, Quinnen Williams had 21 tackles, a sack and a half in 7 games with the Cowboys last year. He's got to get in premier condition. He's got to rev it up. But if I'm coaching the Cowboy defense, I start with these 2 guys because they're badasses. But they were part of that 511-point defense. So these 2 guys got to raise their level of play in this new scheme. They also brought in Jonathan Bullard in free agency. They brought in Otito Ogbonnia from the Chargers to give them some run-stopping defenders. They drafted L.T. Overton in the 4th round from Alabama. They've got some depth. But I think Clark and Williams are absolutely critical for this Cowboy defense. They got to turn it up a notch. If your best players are playing great, you got a chance. And off the edge, the Cowboys have a nucleus of players. And it starts with last year's second-round pick, Donovan Ezeraku out of Boston College. I know he only had 2 sacks. He battled the hip injury. He had some surgery in the offseason, was limited during the OTAs, but he had a 28% pressure rate, which led all rookies. This kid can rush, man. If they can stop the run and get into some predictable passing situations, I look for Ezeraku to turn it up. They drafted Malachi Lawrence out of Central Florida in the first round. Jake, look at these measurables. This kid ran 4.52, had a 40 vertical, and he broad jumped 10.10. The guy was all Big 12. He had 27.5 TFLs, and he had 19.5 sacks at Central Florida. He's a 5th-year senior. I like Lawrence and Ezeraku. They're just young. And on the other side, they bring in the ex-Green Bay Packer, Rashawn Gary. And if you look at statistics, a lot of guys like analytics, they look at that stuff. Over the last 5 seasons, Rashawn Gary, he's going to average 8 sacks and 53 pressures. Only concern I have with Gary is he had 7.5 sacks last year, but he had none in the last 10 games. So Rashawn Gary, he's got to pick it up. He is a sure tackler. Everybody talks about his 616 snaps, not 1 missed tackle. There's a lot to like with Gary. And Sam Williams is back. A couple years ago, he had a nice year in Dallas, suffered an injury. Sam Williams wears number 54. James Houston, number 53. Not a good run defender, but holy shit, does he have some juice rushing the passer. He had 5.5 sacks. And they drafted Jayshon Barham out of Michigan. So they've got 5 or 6 guys that are going to be interesting, and they've got competition. But what I love about the Cowboys the most, ask me, Jake.
What is it?
I love Demarion Overshown, their linebacker. He's an impact game changer. He's rejuvenated. This is a dynamic player. Knee injuries, man, surgeries. He's going to go to training camp this year healthy, and that is big. And they're moving him to Mike linebacker. He's going to wear the green dot. You're going to see Overshown walking around, setting the front, making adjustments, communicating. That's going to be awesome. He's in a contract season. He's playing for a lot of jack. And this guy is a badass. Very fun to watch. He's only played 19 of the last 51 games as a Dallas Cowboy. But you talk about a guy that makes impact plays. I've seen him as an edge rusher, an inside linebacker. He can play in the base. He can play in the sub. He can play his ass off. Knock on wood for Demarion Overshown to be the comeback player of the year. The other linebacker is a guy they acquired from the 49ers. TCU product, D. Winters. Look at D. Winters, man. This guy had a hell of a season last year, 101 tackles. And when you watch him, he has a nose for the ball. He can really close. He's dropping in zone coverage. He sees that check down throw. He'll run over there and he will bring you down with some violence, man. D. Winters and Overshown give Dallas a much improved linebacking core, I believe, from last season. They also have Shamar James coming back. He was a 5th-round pick 2 years ago. Hell, he had 85 tackles. So now you got 3 linebackers. But it's the secondary, I think, that has to show the most improvement. And I think it starts with Deron Bland. Remember a couple years ago, all those pick sixes he had? I mean, every week it seemed like he was returning an interception for a touchdown. He was a star. But now, I think he's in a make-or-break season. He struggled last year. If you look at the target reel, 50 catches against number 26, 630 yards, 5 or 6 touchdown passes. Wasn't very good. They drafted Devin Moore out of Florida. Keep an eye on that kid in the 4th round. On the other side, who's it going to be? Is it going to be Revel, the kid they drafted out of East Carolina? I loved Revel at East Carolina, but he hurt his knee. And last year he didn't play until late in the season. He missed 10 games as a rookie. Revel wears number 34. Watch him. He's in his 2nd year. He's going to take off under Christian Parker's tutelage. They also signed Kobe Durant from the LA Rams. And Durant, he's only given up a 76.3 QBR in his last 4 seasons. He had 3 picks with the Rams last year. 28 years old. He's in his prime. Revel, Durant, you got Bland over here. I think it's going to be interesting as they bring the young kid Devin Moore from Florida along. The safeties are going to be brand new, and it starts with their rookie Caleb Downs from Ohio State. You know, you watch Budda Baker play for Arizona. I love Budda Baker. That's the kind of player Caleb Downs is. He's a hybrid. He can play free safety, linebacker. He can play nickel. He's an outstanding player. He was an All-American at Ohio State. He started for Alabama. He transfers to Ohio State. He can play in any defense, and he can be a dominant force. He's a great communicator. He's fun to watch. Downs will play multiple positions, and so will Jalen Thompson, the safety man they acquired from the Arizona Cardinals. You know, if you remember Jalen Thompson, he came out in the supplemental draft from Washington State. Everybody talks about Budda Baker, but you leave the stadium going, who the hell is Jalen Thompson? He had 578 tackles, man, 37 PBUs, and 9 picks. They gave him a 3-year, $33 million contract. And they got Caleb Downs. You think safety was a problem last year? Yes, indeed. They also signed P.J. Locke, who was on the #1 defense in football, the Denver Broncos. And when Brandon Jones got hurt, P.J. Locke was the starting safety man. They returned Malik Hooker. Hooker's got to play up to his ability. He was a really good Colt. He had some good days as a Cowboy. But those 4 safeties got to communicate. They got to become eraser tacklers, and they got to stay deep. When you're back, you're back. Don't let any of these 40-yard bombs get over your head. But I do think the Cowboys have a lot to prove in the front 4. They've got some depth. They've got 2 good veteran defensive tackles. I love what they've done at linebacker, and I love the improvement that they made on paper at safety. Learn this defense. Come together and address what happened last year. Put a chip on your shoulder as big as Jake's head, and let's go. I'll be honest with you, I like the Dallas Cowboys a lot this year. I like them to make the playoffs. If Dak Prescott plays healthy and they buy in on defense to Christian Parker's new scheme, this is a dark horse to get to the NFC Championship. Next, let's cover the New York Giants. I can't wait to see this. Okay, the New York Giants. You like this red, white, and blue, Jake?
Yeah.
What about you, Clay?
Love it.
You got to understand, this is the darkest period in New York Giant football history. They're coming off a 4-13 season. In the last 3 seasons, they're 13 wins, man. 13 wins, 38 losses in the last 3 years. That's worst in football among everybody but the Tennessee Titans, who are 12-39. But the Giants, they have lost double-digit games in 8 out of the last 9 seasons. That's not New York Giant football. They got to fix that. Yeah, it's been the darkest time, but heck, at the Super Bowl, we talked to Eli Manning. There's always a light at the end of the tunnel. I wonder what Manning thinks about the future of the Giants. I also got to ask you about the state of the Giants.
Yeah.
You know, if you have any question, I think, about Eli Manning, ask how they're doing without you. I mean, they have really cycled through a lot of coaches, a lot of quarterbacks. We had Jackson Dart. I know you're proud of him from Mississippi, but his playing style, man, he's got to learn how to take care of himself, man.
No doubt.
But Harbaugh's there. They got Nagy's in there with the Kansas City Chiefs system.
Yeah.
What do you forecast with your Giants?
Well, I mean, I love John Harbaugh and that hire. I think that's what we needed. We needed that CEO of an organization that's going to hold everybody accountable. And that's, you know, not to say, hey, we got to get exact Tom Coughlin guy, but Tom, everybody was accountable. You weren't walking on eggshells, but you knew if you didn't do your job, he wasn't going to sugar, tail it. He was going to let you know from people.
He was going to let you know the time
everybody.
He got in there,
But that's just not just the players. That's people in the equipment room. That's that's the GM. That's everybody. Weight room. Like, he was going to be hard on you, and if you weren't holding up to the standard that we expected. So I think that's what John Harbaugh brings. And I like Nagy in that Kansas City. You have a quarterback that can throw it down the field. He doesn't mind buying time in the pocket to hit some deep stuff. You get Neighbors running. Let him run loose. So I like that, you have that creativity to create those big plays. So I think there's some excitement. You got some defense, and Brian Burns is getting sacks, and you got Abdul Carter, some young talent. You got, big sexy Dexy in the middle. So there's some talent there, some guys. Now it's, hey, let's get the most out of the potential So I'm excited for that.
They have a general manager, Joe Schoen. He's been there. He's 22-41, and one is the GM. We all have to take responsibility for our one-loss record. He just got an extension. They have Donna Ponte there. She's a senior vice president of football operations and strategy. I don't know what that is. The Giants have been peculiar to me. That's the first time I've used that word. They've let Xavier McKinney go to Green Bay. He had 9 interceptions a couple years ago. Saquon Barkley, I think he ran for 2,000 yards in Philly. Leonard Williams is playing great at defensive line for the world champion Seahawks. They just traded Dexter Lawrence. Daniel Jones left town, and hell, he just got a lot of money to play quarterback for the Colts. Now, Joe Schoen has done a great job. He traded up to get Jackson Dart. He did a nice job getting Malik Neighbors, and he also made a real good trade to get Brian Burns. But the Giants, they got to pick it up. And to do that, I love what they did going out to get John Harbaugh, veteran coach. Yeah, he's 63 years old, but in his 18 years in Baltimore, they averaged 10 wins a game. That's pretty damn good. They won the Super Bowl in 2012, and he got a 5-year, $100 million contract. That's freaking awesome for coaching. You know, since Tom Coughlin retired in 2012, the Giants have hired quite a few first-time head coaches. Ben McAdoo in 16 and 17, Joe Judge in 20 and 21, Brian Daboll, first-time head coach in 22 to 25. Pat Shurmur, he was the head coach in Cleveland. He was there in 18 and 19. But to go get a proven, established head coach might be just what the New York Giants need. When you have 3 really rough seasons in a row, you're going to make roster changes, especially when you bring in a head coach of John Harbaugh's caliber. So let's take a look at the draft. They did have 2 top 10 picks. They went out and got Arvell Reese, linebacker at number 5 out of Ohio State. We'll talk about him in a minute. They got Francis Maui Noah, big right tackle from the Miami Hurricanes. I think they might start him off at guard, but both of those guys should come in and start immediately. They got Colton Hood, cornerback from Tennessee, played at Colorado and Auburn. He could come in and play right away. And they traded up to get Malachi Fields, who had a nice year at Notre Dame. He was at Virginia, you know. He had 2 800-yard seasons, but like Malasek, you know, these guys in Virginia, I don't know what the hell I'm trying to say. They also got Bobby Jamison in the 6th round, Bobby Jamison Travis, defensive tackle from Auburn. They got J.C. Davis, an offensive tackle from Illinois in the 6th round. They got Jack Kelly, another linebacker from BYU in the 6th. But the key names are Arvell Reese, Maui Noah, and Colton Hood and Malachi Fields. Those are the 4 guys that could come in and make a huge impact right away. They also got real busy in free agency. We all know they brought in Coach Harbaugh to be the head coach. Matt Nagy is going to be the offensive coordinator. He comes from Kansas City. They got defensive coordinator Denard Wilson, who was with the Titans last year as the DC, coached with Harbaugh previously. And Harbaugh brought in his special teams coach from Baltimore, Chris Horton. That could be a huge addition because the special teams have been very, very scary in New York the last couple years. Offensively, they brought in another quarterback, Brandon Allen. He'll compete with Jameis Winston for the backup spot. And they brought in 3 ex-Baltimore Ravens. I love the straw man, I call him, Patrick Ricard. He can play fullback. He can play H-back. He can play on the line of scrimmage as a tight end. He's been to 6 Pro Bowls. They brought in tight end Isaiah Likely from the Ravens. He'll have a bigger role. They brought in one of the biggest guards you will ever see, Daniel Fa'alele from the Ravens. I don't even know how big he is. And they brought in another center from the Bengals, Lucas Patrick, and he's going to compete at center for the starting job. They also brought in another Raven, Pro Bowl punter, hell of a punter, Jordan Stout, who led the NFL with a 44.9 net. So that's a good pickup for Coach Harbaugh. They also brought in a ton of wide receivers, man. I mean, we all know Malik Neighbors is recovering from his ACL. Darius Slayton has been recovering from some core muscle surgery. So they went out and signed 5 free agent wide receivers. And one of them is the one and only Odell Beckham Jr., who's making a comeback He's only played 9 games in the last 2 years. But do you remember Odell Beckham, 3 straight 1,300-yard seasons with the Giants? Wouldn't that be something if he was a storyline with this team? They brought in Juju Smith-Schuster from the Kansas City Chiefs and Darnell Mooney, who played with Atlanta the last couple years. Both of those men have experience with Matt Nagy. Schuster Smith, obviously, in Kansas City. Darnell Mooney played for Nagy in Chicago when he was a head coach. They also brought in the speedy return man Calvin Austin from the Steelers, and they brought in Braxton Berrios, who had a big year for the Jets a few years ago. He comes from the Houston Texans. He was hurt most of last season. But they brought in all these receivers because they're not quite sure of Malik Neighbors' status, and Slayton's recovering as well. And how about on defense? Shit, I'm about to lose my breath, man. They brought in a bunch of defensive tackles. Remember, they traded Dexter Lawrence to the Bengals, so they got to replace him. And they lost Roy Robertson Harris to an Achilles injury in the offseason. That's their top 2 inside players. So they brought in DJ Reader from the Detroit Lions. They brought in Sam Roberts, Lee Kaifotu. They brought in Shelby Harris from the Browns, Zach Pickens. I could go on and on. There's a lot of new defensive tackles in New York we don't know much about. They also brought in 2 linebackers. The headline is Tremaine Edmonds. He's been in the league for 8 years, over 100 tackles in every season. He's going to come in and start at linebacker. They brought in Cam Jones for some competition and depth. And in the secondary, they brought in 4 new players. Craig Newsome, the ex-first-round pick with the Browns, could be an opening day starter. They brought in Ardarius Washington, who played well for John Harbaugh a couple years ago. He'll compete at nickel and at safety for playing time. Jason Pinnock returns to the Giants. He was in San Francisco last year. He could be in the mix, as is the ex-Dolphin Elijah Campbell. That's a lot of people coming in free agency and in the draft. And who's out the door? Well, they lost Greg Von Roten, an offensive lineman. He was an inside player. Austin Schlottman, he was a center. Those guys are gone. And linebacker, leading tackler, Bobby Okereke is gone. They also lost starting cornerback Cordell Flott to Tennessee. Dexter Lawrence is now in Cincinnati. Rakeem Nunez-Roches, defensive tackle, is gone. Safety Shane Belton is gone. And they replaced their punter, Gilliam. They replaced their kicker, Graham Gano. There's a lot going on here. Yeah, they also lost a couple key offensive players. Wandale Robinson, who led the team in receiving. He's in Tennessee with Coach Dayball. And they lost their tight end, Bellinger. Daniel Bellinger left town to go with the Tennessee Titans as well. And Russell Wilson is also gone. You know, Coach Harbaugh has been tested early here in the offseason with some off-the-field stuff. You know, there's rumors out there about one of the owners in the Epstein reports. I don't get into that. Then there's running back Cam Scadaboo supposedly making some off-color jokes at a WWE event. Jackson Dart, okay, he goes and introduces the President of the United States. And Abdul Carter, he's like, hey, man, it's a social media contest of some kind. I don't know, man. Then Malik Neighbors, he comes on the social media. He criticizes the draft picks. Aw, you know, can't we all just get freaking along, man? But anyways, Coach Harbaugh's taking this as an opportunity to address adversity and build his culture. Coach Harbaugh is going to let the players speak. And he's going to turn this team over to the players. He's going to give them ownership. Now take ownership and let's come together and let's get the Giants going. You know, the Giants, here's what's confusing to me. They've been hard to watch, man. I said 13-38 in the last 3 seasons, 4-13 last year. Well, don't tell the TV executives that, because who's opening up Sunday Night Football at home this year? The New York Giants against the Dallas Cowboys. Then they got to go on national TV the next week at the Rams on Monday Night Football. They're on primetime TV 4 times, and they won 4 games. What the hell's going on with these TV executives? They should have to earn their way onto Monday Night Football. I used to sit up there on Monday Night Football. Man, I would bitch about our schedule sometimes. You know, we never flexed our games. Don't forget, Giant fans, week 3. The Tennessee Titans come to town. That'll be an interesting opportunity for former head coach Brian Daboll to get some revenge against the Giants. You're also going to see Wan'Dale Robinson, Daniel Bellinger, and Cordell Flott if you want to wear those jerseys. You'll see those guys wearing the Tennessee Titan colors. You know what I think's really important, Clay?
What?
I think it's important for the Giants to start fast. I've already said they open the season on national TV at home against the Cowboys, their rivals. And then they play on the road on national TV against the Super Bowl champion, who has already been fitted for their rings, the LA Rams. Now, wouldn't it be something if the Giants started fast and got after those two teams' ass and built some momentum and got the city of New York behind this team? Whew, it'd be great. They got to start fast. They got to get the mojo going. I hope they come out of the chute. They got to get some key players healthy and on the field every week. We've talked about Malik Neighbors, Darius Slayton. These guys got to get healthy and play. They are the money 1 and 2 receivers. Cam Scadaboo got a gruesome injury week 8. They need him to be their horse this year. And Kayvon Thibodeau, he coming off shoulder surgery. He just had a couple sacks last year. This is a top 5 pick in a contract year, man. They got to get more out of him. And Jackson Dart, you got to stay on the grass every snap, every week this year. Stay out of that damn concussion protocol tent. I really think there's going to be great competition. That's the third thing I'd like to say. At the place kicker position. Make a note of that, Jake. At center, there's going to be a lot of competition at center. There's going to be a lot of competition on the right side of this offensive line with this top 10 pick, Francis Mauanoa, and the addition of Daniel Fa'alele. They're going to compete with Illuminor at right tackle. They're going to try to solve that right side of the offensive line. And most importantly, there's a lot of competition at free safety, nickel, defensive tackle, at tight end. Who's the blocking tight end in this outfit? A lot of mysteries need to be uncovered. The Giants' turnover ratio, so-so. They were 15th in the league, 15 takeaways, 17 giveaways. They were -2. Special teams-wise, this has been the Achilles heel for the Giants the last few years. We talked about the addition of Chris Horton, the ex-special teams coach of the Ravens. We talked about the addition of Jordan Stout. He's the highest paid punter now, coming in from the Ravens where he was in the Pro Bowl. At kicker, Gano is out. Ben Sauls is a name to keep an eye on. He came in late season last year, 8 for 8 on field goals, 7 for 7 on PATs. And don't lose sight of the battle between he and Dominic Zavada, who kicked at Arkansas State, kicked at Michigan. Those two guys are in a battle during training camp. And Deonte Banks, who really did not play well as a first-round pick at corner, he turned out to be a pretty damn good kick returner, averaging 32.7 yards per return. They also added Calvin Austin from the Steelers, Braxton Berrios. Both of those guys have been very good returners. Last thing I got with the Giants is let's see these second-year players step up and kick ass and be the leaders of this franchise. I'm talking about Abdul Carter, Jackson Dart, Darius Alexander, and Scadaboo at running back. That last year's draft class in their second year, they know the drill now. They know what it's like to play for the New York Giants. It's time for them to really turn it up a notch. And finally, I want to see the Giants get a lot tougher, man. Their run defense was pitiful last year. And I want to see them ram it at people with the addition of the straw man, Patrick Ricard, return to Giant football. I want to see him say less and do more like Mark Bavaro did. Do you remember that guy? He was a badass. Let's get into it. Okay, the New York Giants offense. Coach Harbaugh, what a staff he has hired, man. Think about this. He gets Matt Nagy to come over from Kansas City. Nagy was the head coach of the Bears. Nagy coached with Pat Mahomes in Kansas City. He'll be the offensive coordinator. But there are 4 former offensive coordinators on this staff. Not only Nagy, but they got Brian Callahan. He was the head coach of the Titans. He was an offensive coordinator with the Bengals. He's coaching the quarterbacks. Greg Roman, who was the offensive coordinator of the Chargers, formerly with Harbaugh as OC of the Ravens, he's here coaching. And Tim Keeg, the tight end coach, used to be the offensive coordinator of Houston. Not only that, they got 2 former college head coaches. Mike Bloomgren from Rice, hell of a line coach. He was at Stanford with Andrew Luck and David Shaw. They're going to ram it at you. And then they hire Willie Taggart, who was the running back coach of the Ravens, former head coach at USF and Florida State. What a big name staff this is. But there's an old saying, man, too many chefs in the kitchen can spoil the stew. So let's get along. Can't we all just get along? Wouldn't that be great? So this coaching staff, they have a lot of ability and a lot of stuff to bring to their young quarterback, Jackson Dart. Just think, Matt Nagy showing him cut-ups of Pat Mahomes. Brian Callahan showing him cut-ups of when he was with Cincinnati and Joe Burrow. And then you have Greg Roman. Hell, he deserves a lot of credit for developing Lamar Jackson in Baltimore. So they bring a lot of experience and ideas to this young quarterback as they shape his future. The cool thing about Matt Nagy is he speaks Andy Reid's language. And if you think about Mike Kafka, last year's offensive coordinator, last year's interim head coach, the guy in Jackson Dart's earpiece, Kafka used to coach with Andy Reid. So the language between coordinator and quarterback should not be dramatically different. That's pretty cool. What is going to be very interesting to me is how Matt Nagy adapts his offense to the New York Giants and his young quarterback. In Kansas City and in Chicago, Nagy kind of merged the West Coast offense with the RPOs. What does RPO stand for, Jake?
Ridiculous protection offense.
That's what I say, but it's a run-pass option. For instance, in Chicago, you would see the inside zone where they would block the 4 down linemen and the 2 inside linebackers, and they would read the defensive end. And if the end came up the field, they would hand it. If he closed, he could keep it. The quarterback could. Or if they loaded the box, he could just pick it up and throw a quick out or a block, drag. I called it a brag. So there were 4 things that could happen. Hand it off, keep it, throw it here or throw it there. Those are RPOs. But with Coach Bloomgren coming in and Greg Roman, they like to get under the center and run gap schemes, man. Double teams against these defensive tackles. They need a tight end that can block, linemen that can pull and block second-level linebackers. And with this 6-time Pro Bowl fullback, Patrick Ricard, good God. What are they going to do on offense? I don't know. It'll be fun to watch how they adapt, how they put this offense together, the RPO scheme with the smash mouth. I call it the RRB ball. Ricard, Roman, and Bloomgren. I want to see that in New York. The other thing to think about with these coaches is coaches have stuff to prove too. It's not just players that change teams. He has something to prove. He's got something to prove. He's got a chip on his shoulder. So does Matt Nagy. Nagy wants to prove to everybody he's still a badass offensive coach. So does Callahan, and so does Roman, so do all these guys. I can't wait to see these coaches showcase their preparation opening night against the Cowboys. Bottom line is we got to expect Jackson Dart and his dual threat abilities to be a big part of this running game. Last year, Dart carried the ball for 487 yards, man. That was 3rd in the league by quarterbacks. A lot of that is on scrambles, but a lot of it is on design quarterback runs and these RPOs we're talking about. The big thing is for him to take the next step, he's got to be on the practice field. He's got to be on the field every week. He can't be in a concussion protocol tent 5 times. He can't be missing 2 games because of a concussion. Get out of bounds. Be careful with your right shoulder, your right elbow, and your head. Man, we got to have Dart on the field all 17 regular season games. You know, Jackson Dart, he deserves a couple minutes of your time. Last year, he sat behind Russell Wilson in weeks 1 through 3. Then he takes over week 4, and he wins 2 out of his first 3 starts. And he beats 2 playoff teams. Chargers, pow! Philadelphia Eagles, boom, on a short week. It was impressive the way he started the season. The other thing that was impressive is he played 11 starts, and he only had Malik Neighbors for 1 game. The kid goes out there and throws for 2,300 yards, and That's the most ever by a New York Giant rookie quarterback without his great receiver. He had 9 rushing touchdowns. That's a franchise record for a New York Giant quarterback. He had 24 combined touchdowns in 11 starts, 15 passing and 9 rushing. And he only turned the ball over 7 times, 5 interceptions, 2 fumbles. There's a lot to like with Dart, man. And when you really look at Dart, he does a lot of things really well. And that's why you could say there are some comparisons with Mahomes and Lamar Jackson from a dual threat standpoint. I'm sure these coaches are very excited to shape this offense towards his strengths. The New York Giants, they got to protect their quarterback better. Their offensive line, their pickups in terms of blitzes, Jackson Dart himself. He can't hold the ball as long as he did last year. He's got to get rid of the ball quicker. He's got to function better in the pocket. The other thing they need to improve on is their vertical passing game. The Giants threw the ball over 20 yards down the field 40 times last year when Jackson Dart was in the game. They only completed 10. That's 10 out of 40. You don't have to go to Virginia to know that's 25%. But the sacks, the hits, they got to leave this offense. Dart was sacked over 4 times in 5 different games. He had a 9.4 sack percentage. 9.4% of his passes he got sacked on. He needs to understand sometimes the greatest play you can make is a throwaway because it's the only play. The running game, not a lot of people realize, is the strength of this offense. The Giants were 5th in the NFL last year rushing the football, and they're the only team in the NFL to have 4 guys with over 400 yards rushing. Tyrone Tracy, he had 740. Cam Scadaboo had 410. Remember, he got hurt in week 8. Jackson Dart had 487, and Devin Singletary had 437. So they had 4 guys over 400 yards. Only the Giants can say that. Don't forget about Cam Scadaboo in his last year at Arizona State. He rushed for over 1,500 yards, and he had over 500 yards receiving. No one did that in college football since McCaffrey did it at Stanford in 2015. Cam Scadaboo needs to be the tone setter. He needs to be the guy that rings the bell in New York. But that's the key for the New York Giant, I think, offense. The other backs you need to understand. Tyrone Tracy, he was a sleeper of mine a year ago for all the fantasy football people. Here's a guy that played wide receiver for 4 years at Iowa. He goes to Purdue, plays running back for 1 year. This guy's a hell of a receiver, man. Tyrone Tracy. He can run it, he can catch it, they can align him in a lot of different positions. The man is dangerous. And Devin Singletary, 437 last year, he had 437 in 2024. And I think he's the best pass protecting back on this team. 3 good runners, and they got the straw man, Patrick Ricard, 6'3", 300 plus pounds, 6 Pro Bowls in Baltimore. You know, since Ricard has been in Baltimore, they ran the ball for 20,070 yards. That's almost 3,700 more than any other NFL team. The guy's a beast, man. He can play multiple positions, and I just love the identity of a team when you got a blocking tight end, a blocking fullback, and you got 3 good backs with a quarterback that can run himself. To me, the biggest question, as we talked about earlier, is at wide receiver. We all know Malik Neighbors had a historic rookie season. 109 catches, 1,300 yards, 7 touchdowns, but he got hurt last year. He had just 18 catches, 270 yards, a couple touchdowns, and that ACL injury takes time to recover properly. And you know the Giants don't want to rush him. And we all know Neighbors is dying to get back out there. Darius Slayton, he had that core muscle surgery. They just re-signed Slayton to a big contract. They also lost Gunnar Olszewski, a slot receiver that was competing for a job in training camp for the season. So Neighbors, Olszewski, and Slayton, we don't know their status as we head in to this regular season. The guy to keep an eye on is Malachi Fields. Why do you think they traded up to get him in the 3rd round? 6'4", 218 pounds. You guys remember Plaxico Burress, New York Giant fans, that big catch in the Super Bowl? This guy makes contested catches, man. At Notre Dame, he had 11 contested catches last year. Only Carnell Tate at Ohio State had more. He did not run well at the combine. He ran 4.61. It scared some people away. But this guy has no fear, man. He is a physical guy. Me and Malasek were at the Pitt Notre Dame game. He made a catch right in front of us that was contested, and even Malasek said, holy shit. Two guys to keep a close eye on are these two receivers with familiarity in the Matt Nagy system. Starting with Darnell Mooney. I like Mooney, man. He's been down here at the FFCA. He was hurt last year in Atlanta. He just had 32 or 33 catches. But the year before, he had 992 yards. He's a long-range threat. He can really run. He can play multiple positions. Darnell Mooney played for Nagy in Chicago. The other guy is Juju Smith-Schuster. The man is physical. He can run with the ball after he catches it. He can play inside or out. He had 33 for 345 in Kansas City. Last 2 seasons, he's been with Matt Nagy. So those guys have an upper hand in terms of knowing the system. I like this Calvin Austin guy out of Memphis. Fast, man. He can return kicks. He did a good job for the Steelers. He's 5'9". He's fearless. He's a tough guy. He battled injuries last year. Can Braxton Berrios come back and be a quick, nifty, reliable slot receiver like he was for the Jets? They got to find production in the slot. They lost Wan'Dale Robinson, who caught 1,000 passes last year. Seemed like he was the primary target a lot. And then we get to Odell Beckham. What the hell's going to happen? I mean, it is worth watching. Don't forget, Odell Beckham was with John Harbaugh in Baltimore in 2023. They got a relationship. Odell caught 35 passes for 565 and 5 touchdowns in 2023. But in the last 2 seasons, he's only played 9 games. I didn't see him play last season. Last time I saw him play was in Miami in 2024. He just caught 9 little bubble screens. But I used to love, when I was doing Monday Night Football, to go down there and watch Odell Beckham in pregame warm-up. He can catch the ball with one hand with his eyes closed. I would love to see him be the comeback player of the year. Big name to keep an eye on to me is Isaiah Likely, the ex-Baltimore Raven. He's not really a classic tight end like Mark Bavaro. He doesn't really line up in line. He lines up in the slot. He lines up out wide. I think they're going to use him like the Chiefs used Travis Kelce. But he is going to have an expanded role. Why the hell do you think they gave him $40 million? We interviewed him at the Super Bowl. We like this guy. He's one of our guys that we advise fantasy football people out there to keep a close eye on. You know, he's never had more than 477 yards in a season. And last year, you know, he starts off the season. He's missing 6 games. I think he broke his foot. He's been in Mark Andrews' shadow. This is his time, man, to really rise up and show what he can do coming out of Coastal Carolina. Isaiah Likely is going to line up here and there. He's going to line up everywhere. And he's a good perimeter blocker, but he's not a guy you want to see in the core a whole lot. The offensive line of the New York Giants. Take a look at this group real quick. If Andrew Thomas is listening, if he can stay healthy for every single game, he can be the best left tackle in the league, but that's been hard for him. He had that Liz Frank foot injury in 2024. Hasn't really played every single game since his rookie season. He has got to stay healthy at left tackle. If he doesn't, at least they drafted J.C. Davis out of Illinois in the 6th round. If I was a Giant fan, I would go to the preseason games just to watch number 74, the rookie at left tackle, because you know he's going to play a lot. At left guard, I think the Giants are set with John Runyon, the ex-Green Bay Packer. This will be his 3rd straight season as the starter at left guard. They do have Aaron Stinney as a quality backup player. The big battle is going to be at center. They took a 2nd-round pick a couple years ago and they used it on John Michael Schmitz. He's been okay, but he really hasn't lived up to the hype of a 2nd-round pick. So they went out and they signed Lucas Patrick, an under-the-radar free agent who was with the Bengals. He's been with the Saints. I think you're going to see a hell of a battle in training camp between these two men for that starting center spot. Francis Mauigoa, he was brought in here, I think, to start at right guard. But remember this, they also signed Daniel Faalele, that big guy from Baltimore who started about 30 games for John Harbaugh. Jermaine Illuminor is the right tackle. I used to coach him with the Raiders. Could they move Francis out to right tackle where he started 40 games for the Miami Hurricanes? He never missed the start. He played 2,800 snaps at right tackle. Could they move Francis to right tackle and put Daniel Faalele in there at right guard? There's going to be some competition over there. You will see yourself. The quarterback, Dart. Let's stay healthy. I can't wait to see the scheme they put together for him. Jameis Winston threw for 560 yards, 2 touchdowns, damn near beat Detroit in Detroit. The guy is still a very good passer, and he's a vibe guy, man. He's a great guy to have around. And they also signed Brandon Allen as the number 3 QB. I don't know if they'll keep 3 or not, but keep an eye on Allen to take a lot of snaps in the preseason. I love the depth at running back. We've talked about that. There's going to be some real competition at wide receiver. Let's hope Malik Neighbors gets healthy. Let's hope Slayton gets healthy. But while they're coming back from injury, let's give these new receivers a lot of reps, and let's let the best players play. Okay, this New York Giant defense, they also have new leadership. They got a new defensive coordinator, Denard Wilson. He's 43 years old. Wilson was with the Tennessee Titans the last 2 seasons. And a lot of people say, oh, we got for the Tennessee Titans, oh, they were 13-39. Hey, Denard Wilson in 2024, who was second in the league in total defense, Jake? The Titans. The guy did a hell of a job. Everybody says, well, they were 30th in scoring defense. Well, hell, Will Levis threw about 5 pick sixes. You can't blame Denard Wilson for everything. And then in 2025, I mean, they were severely undermanned. I don't know who their corners were. I don't know who their edge rushers were in some of these games. But this guy can coach, man. He was with Harbaugh in Baltimore in 2023 as the secondary coach. The guy's been around Mike McDonald. The guy's been around Greg Williams, Jonathan Gannon, Todd Bowles. This guy has paid his dues. Think about this guy. 9 years as a defensive backfield coach. Rams, Jets, Eagles, Ravens, Tennessee Titans. Now he's with the Giants. Son of a bitch, he's been around the league already, hasn't he? That's why I don't recommend some of you young guys getting coaching. Good God. But I think Coach Wilson would agree. He has significantly better talent to work with in New York than he had in Tennessee. As you watch the preseason, I think you're going to see a lot of zone. Last year in Tennessee, they played a lot of 4 coverage, 4 deep, 3 under. They played that coverage, one of the higher percentages in the NFL last season. And they do a really good job of disguising. That's something they criticized last year's defensive coordinator, Shane Bowen, about. We didn't disguise enough. You know, quit criticizing all these coaches all the time, will you? Not a lot of blitzes. Coach Wilson, 22% last year in Tennessee. Why should you blitz with the Giants? If this pass rush is what it is supposed to be, they should be able to rely on getting good pressure with a 4-man rush where they can mix up coverages and disguise their looks. You know, as we talk about the Giants, you can't help but get excited about Brian Burns, man. 16.5 sacks. Kayvon Thibodeau, 5th pick in the draft. They got Abdul Carter, 3rd pick in the draft. They got Arvell Reese. They say he can run and rush. They got all these guys that can run. But it's not about the sacks. Let's talk about the run game. You want to, Jake?
Yeah.
I mean, we got to focus the New York Giant defense, all of us, right now on the run game. Last year, 5.3 yards per carry, man. That's the worst in the NFL. That's the worst in New York Giant history. And we said this is the darkest time in New York Giant history. You know why that is, Jake? Because of the run defense. I mean, they gave up 75 runs of over 10 yards. That's 10 more than anybody else. That's called getting gashed. And you know, we keep statistics nowadays for defensive linemen. How many pressures he has. How many batted balls does he have? How many hits on the quarterback does he have? Well, how many times did you get your ass kicked in a running game? That should be a statistic we keep. Because when you watch the Giants, they got to really understand that was not acceptable last year on any level. I mean, I'm watching the Chargers. They get a 54-yard running play on a 1-back power play. And I'm looking at it. I don't know what gap Holland has, the safety coming over the top. I don't know what Darius Alexander's doing at the point of attack on that double team. Then I watch 2 duo plays. One of them's against Philadelphia. They hand the ball to Saquon Barkley. He runs for 65 yards. He could have run right into Rocky Balboa at the Spectrum. Jesus criminy. I mean, I don't know. 27, Newman, he's got to make a grass tackle. It's not even close. I don't know what the hell they're doing right there. And then there's a 69-yard duo, Jahmyr Gibbs. He runs it right up the middle. They run it right into a strong safety blitz, and Amon St. Brown comes in, blocks Holland, bad run fit, 70-yard touchdown. Sheesh, Gibbs ran all the way to the Ford plant. So they've added 2 big playmaking fast linebackers. They go get Tremaine Edmonds from the Chicago Bears, and they draft Arvell Reese. Both of them 6'4", over 240 pounds. Both can run. Now, they've got to address this run defense, and they've got to do it daily. It all starts up front. They lost Dexter Lawrence. He played 68% of the plays, the #1 play time of the interior people. He went to 3 Pro Bowls. He had the elbow injury. He only had 31 tackles. We can't blame him anymore. He's in Cincinnati. And then Roy Robertson Harris, who was second in terms of play time with 57%, he's out for the year with an Achilles. So back to that owl again. Who the hell's it going to be? Who is going to play defensive tackle? They added 5 free agents. Notable free agent is DJ Reader, the ex-Detroit Lion. He's going to be 31 years old when the season starts. He had 4 good seasons in Houston. He went to Cincinnati, 2 years in Detroit. They need Reader on the nose to kick some ass. They also brought in the 34-year-old Shelby Harris. He was with Cleveland last year. That man has 40 batted passes. Do you know that? Shelby Harris batted one out at the end of the game against me, and we lost the game because he bought that son of a bitch. Shelby Harris, you got me good, man. But he's in town to play defensive tackle. And they got to get their second-year defensive tackle from Toledo, Darius Alexander, to play great. I think he's the key to this front. But other free agents they brought in, Sam Roberts, Lakai Fotu, Zach Pickens. They drafted a 6th-round pick, Bobby Jamison Travis, guy out of Auburn. These guys got to really play much better against the run. And the 2 new linebackers, they're the big story, I think, on this Giant defense in terms of big names. You know, Tremaine Edmonds started in this league for 8 years. He's had over 100 tackles every single season. He went to the Pro Bowl in 2019 as a Bill, went to the Pro Bowl in 2022 as a Bill. The Bears last year had Edmonds, and they chose not to re-sign him. They didn't think he was a $15 million linebacker. So the Giants, they couldn't wait to snatch him up. They basically are using Tremaine Edmonds, think about this, to replace Bobby Okereke. Okereke had 143 tackles now for this defense last year. So that was kind of a swap. And Edmonds is going to wear the green dot. He's going to be the mentor to Arvell Reese, the ex-Ohio State Buckeye who went number 5 overall. And everybody talks about Matt Patricia, defensive coordinator at Ohio State, the ex-Patriot with Bill Belichick. He plays the adjuster. He can play as the edge player. He can play as a linebacker. He's only started 1 full season. So, whoa, Nelly. Isn't that what Keith Jackson used to say? Whoa, Nelly. We're going to make him a weak side linebacker. Teach him how to recognize blocking schemes, see the splits, take on guards, take on Ricard in the hole at fullback, read out and recover on play action passes. Let him become a really good inside linebacker before we put too much on this young man. 1 full year as a starter, and only 56% of the time did he play as an inside linebacker. 40% of the time he's playing on the edge. So Reese has a lot to learn, and he has a lot to prove, even though he has a lot of athletic ability. But that entire front 7, man, they got to get better against the run. You want a negative stat, Clay?
Yeah.
2.05 yards allowed before contact? I'm reading this. I can't even believe it until I see some of these long runs. And you can see they have got to do a better job collectively in their run fits, getting off of blocks, and making impact tackles. That's key. Okay, the secondary of the Giants, that'll be an area I think that Coach Wilson will really make an imprint with his disguises and his development of players. They got to get more out of Paulson Adebo, the ex-New Orleans Saint. They gave him a ton of money. I think Adebo has a $26 million cap hit this year. You know, Adebo in New Orleans had 7 picks in his last 22 games. He only had 1 interception in 12 games as a Giant. He hurt that knee. He missed 5 games. Adebo has been hurt quite a bit. He's only played every game in his rookie season during his career. He's had some injuries and some nicks along the way. But when I watched him in New Orleans, he was a left corner. I saw him as the left corner. But as a Giant, he's playing star coverage, meaning he'll break the huddle and he'll look for the star receiver or whoever they tell him to go cover. So he'll play left and right. He'll go wherever their star receiver goes. So Adebo has to come back from the injury. He's got to get more ball skills, man. He's got to get more interceptions. We need big plays out of Paulson Adebo this year. The other corner, there's going to be a battle, man. They get Craig Newsome. I like Newsome. I loved him at Northwestern. He was a good Cleveland Brown. I love Newsome because he's versatile. He played inside in Cleveland pretty damn good. He played outside in Jacksonville last year. The guy's a good player. And they drafted Colton Hood in the 2nd round out of Tennessee. What I love about Hood is he'll tackle, he'll wrap you up, he'll eliminate some of these big runs, and he runs 4.4. And he had 4.5 tackles for loss. He had 2 defensive touchdowns last year for the Tennessee defense. And I have the target list. I watch all the targets. I saw 72 targets against Hood. How many touchdowns, Jake? 0. So I think Hood and Newsome will be a real good upgrade for the New York Giants. Remember, Deonte Banks and Cordell Flott were the corners last year. Banks has really struggled. Deonte Banks, the former #1 pick, he's been really relegated to the kick return business. They did not pick up his 5th-year option. And in the slot, they do like Drew Phillips. He's a good downhill run defender. He made 66 tackles. But Phillips, I think, struggled at times in coverage. What was the coverage on some of those downs? And the penalties, they got to go away, man. He had 9 penalties last year, 4th most of all the DBs in the NFL. So I think Phillips is going to have a battle. They could put Newsome inside and leave Hood out there as the rookie right corner. I also think our Darius Washington, the ex-Baltimore Raven who's healthy now, could go in there as a big nickel. I look for a big battle in here at nickel. I look for a battle at right corner. And the 2 safeties, I think it's very important for us all to remember. Holland, Javon Holland out of Oregon. He was given a 3-year contract for $45 million. This man is 26 years old. He did not play to his standards last year. I don't know what they were asking him to do, but they desperately need this cat to play to his level. He is a really good talent. I didn't feel him as much the last year in Miami, and certainly last year as a New York Giant. He didn't look like himself, but they got to get a lot more out of him. Otherwise, you'll see a Darius Washington and Elijah Campbell, 2 free agent acquisitions. They'll be competing for playtime there. The other safety will be a battle. Tyler Nubin was 3rd on the team in tackles last year. When they fired their defensive coordinator, Shane Bowen, the new guy used Nubin as a dime linebacker type. He was always near the line of scrimmage, forcing the run. He was playing inside, and he was a lot better player. I think Nubin struggles the deeper you play him. He got victimized last year with some bad angles, and he's going to get competition from Jason Pinnock. Pinnock played for the Giants and played pretty good. He left, he went to the 49ers, but guess who's back, Jake? Pinnock. So Pinnock and Nubin will compete at the strong safety position. They need Holland to play better at free. But let's give you a quick summary. The #1 thing I would do if I was coaching the Giants is I'd go to 9-on-7 and run the ball. And I would tell Greg Roman and Matt Nagy, ram the ball at these guys with some of these gap schemes. None of these RPOs. I want to see them earn the right to rush the passer. And when we do rush the passer, let me tell you something, Clay. Last year, they had this 3-down package. They had 3 down rushers, and they put number 0, Burns, and number 51, Carter, as inside linebackers walking around. They'd walk around, they'd mismatch you, confuse you. It was awesome. Now you got Arvell Reese, another hybrid type guy. He played the adjuster. You got a chance to really mismatch a running back, create some confusion with speed. But we can't let ourselves work on all our blitzes until we solve the number one problem. What is it, Jake?
The run defense.
We got to stop the run. I mean, when you think about the Giants, man, when they were 1986 champions, George Martin, Jim Burt, Leonard Marshall, Banks and Taylor, Gary Reasons, and Harry Carson, fucking A, man, that was, sends chills. Then in 1990, it's Pepper Johnson, Steve DiAsi inside, pretty much the same front, only they got Eric Howard playing the nose. And then, when they kicked our ass when I was coaching, how about these edge rushers? Strahan, Kiwanuka, JPP, but inside they had Linval Joseph and Chris freaking Canty, and they had Tuck. Let's go, man. Are you guys fired up?
Yeah.
This New York Giant team, if they can address the run, get these second-year players going, and get Jackson Dart to take off, whoo-hoo, we could have something really cool. Maybe the TV executives are right. Well, I got to take my shirt off. I do love Mark Bavaro. Now we're going to do the Philadelphia Eagles. This will be interesting. Okay, let's talk about the Philadelphia Eagles. That's my favorite team in the East. You know, I used to coach there for 3 years. Randall Cunningham. You like this shirt, Jake?
Yeah.
Yeah, we saw Randall Cunningham. We were out in Vegas. I love Starship 12. But anyways, the Philadelphia Eagles head coach Nick Sirianni, they win the Super Bowl in 2024 and in 2025. It's kind of a disjointed team, disappointing with a first-round exit against the San Francisco 49ers. Let's talk about Nick Sirianni. I mean, I hear a lot of people saying the guy's on the hot seat. What the hell's he on a hot seat for? I mean, look at this guy. He's been out there for 5 years. He's been in the playoffs 5 times. How many coaches have won 3 division titles, been to 2 conference championship games, and 2 Super Bowls and won 1 in their first 5 years? How many guys in the history of football, Jake?
I don't know.
0! The only guy that did it was Nick Sirianni. So, you know, after being out in Philadelphia and having all those people on WIP calling in the radio saying, Gruden, that guy is an idiot. If his IQ was 1 point less, he'd be a plant. Get off this guy's case, man. This guy's a hell of a coach. I mean, the Eagles got a lot going for themselves. They have a distinguished head coach from a winning perspective. They got arguably the best general manager in football in Howie Roseman. They got a Super Bowl MVP quarterback in Jalen Hurts. They got a hell of a defense. They are in a win-now mode, and I think they might win big this year. DraftKings, my friends, they predict that they're going to win 10.5 games. Now, that could change. They also think the Eagles are a 16-1 favorite to win the Super Bowl. So a lot of people agree Philadelphia is loaded, and they're a favorite to get to the Super Bowl. Let's look at who's coming and who's going in Philadelphia. As you know, all of these teams these days make a lot of changes. Starting in the draft, Philadelphia trades up to get USC wide receiver Mekhi Lemon. I think it ticked off the Steelers. They traded right ahead of them. There's some rumors that Pittsburgh wanted Lemon as well. Then they take Eli Stowers, tight end from Vanderbilt. We had Diego Pavia in here. God, Stowers is a freak show. Wait till you hear about his measurables. He's going to compete at tight end, but I think his versatility is going to allow him to play in the slot, out wide. He's going to be a nightmare matchup for people. They also took one of the biggest offensive tackles I have seen. Miami Hurricane Markel Bell. He was the starting left tackle for the Hurricanes. I think he's going to go over there and be mentored by the great Lane Johnson to be the future right tackle of the Eagles. Then they went out in the 5th round and took one of my kind of sleeper guys in the draft, quarterback Cole Payton out of North Dakota State. Athletic guy. He brings some intrigue to the quarterback position. Remember, Philadelphia signed Andy Dalton. They draft Cole Payton. What's going on with Tanner McKee? There's going to be some intrigue this preseason at quarterback. They also drafted 3 7th-round players, starting with Cole Wisniewski, really good safety man at Texas Tech, And then the most interesting guy in the entire draft is, I think you pronounce it Uer Bernard. You know where he's from, Jake?
Where?
Nigeria. He never played Pop Warner football, high school football, college football, but he showed up at this workout and he blew everybody away. Remember, they got Jordan Mailata from a foreign land. I think it was New Zealand. He comes out of nowhere to become the best left tackle. Could this young guy be the next Fletcher Cox? We'll see. And they drafted a young edge rusher, Keyshawn James Newby from New Mexico. But their draft, obviously, is big time loaded for the offense with tight end Stowers and Mekhi Lemon, the receiver. They also added a new offensive coordinator, Sean Mannion, the ex-quarterback coach of the Green Bay Packers, just getting started in his young coaching career. He will replace Kevin Patullo as the OC. They brought in the veteran trigger, Andy Dalton, who's thrown for almost 40,000 yards. They traded with Carolina to bring in the Red Rifle. They signed Damian Pierce, running back, had some productive seasons with the Houston Texans. He'll compete for a job. And they really are giving their receiving core a facelift. They brought in Dontavian Wicks in a trade with the Green Bay Packers. I really like Wicks, man. He was underutilized a little bit in Green Bay because they had so many weapons. I think that could be a big fit for Philly. They signed the ex-Kansas City Chief Hollywood Brown, who's battled some injuries, but he is still a productive player. And they also brought in Elijah Moore, a well-traveled slot receiver who's been in multiple NFL cities. They brought in 2 tight ends, Johnny Munt, and they also signed Stone Smart. So they brought in a couple tight ends that can run block. These 2 tight ends can also pass protect, and they can really give Philadelphia some competition at that position. And I expect Sean Mannion to use more tight ends, multiple tight end sets. That's why they're here. They also signed some depth on the offensive line. They went out and got Michael Jordan, a swing guard. You got to have linemen that have some versatility, and you got to have depth. And on defense, Vic Fangio returns as the defensive coordinator. They went out and they had a facelift at the edge position. They made a trade with the Minnesota Vikings on draft day to get Jonathan Grenard, and they signed him to a big deal. Grenard is a big deal if he's healthy. He was hurt a little bit last year in Minnesota, and his production fell off. They also got a high-effort rusher from Buffalo, A.J. Epinesa, who's got 25 career sacks. Joe Tryon-Shoyinka. He's bounced around the league the last couple years. He was a former first-round pick with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And a sleeper edge player from Atlanta, Arnold Ebiketie. It's hard to say, but he's really fun to watch. He's got some twitch. He can set the edge in a running game. 4 new edge rushers. But the big name is Jonathan Grenard. The other big name is big corner Reek Woolen of the Seattle Seahawks. Man, 6'4". He comes in and addresses a huge need for the Eagle defense. This is a ball-hawking corner. He signed a 1-year deal. They also signed a well-traveled Jonathan Jones who can play nickel. He can play on the outside for some depth and competition. There's some players that are coming. Here's the players that are going. Starting with offensive coordinator Kevin Patullo. We already said it was one and done. He's been replaced by Sean Mannion. They also let veteran quarterback Sam Howell go. We already talked about the addition of Cole Payton and Andy Dalton. At running back, they said goodbye to A.J. Dillon. And at wide receiver, obviously the big trade with the Patriots, A.J. Brown is no longer a Philadelphia Eagle. They also let their number 3 receiver, Jahan Dotson, go. So they're getting a new look at the receiver position. They let a couple backup offensive linemen go, Matt Pryor and Brett Toth, no longer in Philadelphia. And on defense, they've added 4 new edge rushers, so they're going to eliminate 4 edge rushers. Jalen Phillips left town after the trade with Miami. He's currently with the Carolina Panthers. Azeez Ojulari, Josh Uche, and obviously Brendan Graham, the veteran Philadelphia Eagle, are no longer in Philly. They also said goodbye to a productive young linebacker, Nakobe Dean. He signed with the Las Vegas Raiders. And they lost their safety man, Reed Blankenship, who played a lot of quality snaps on the back end for Philly. Sidney Brown, backup safety and special teams man, he's gone. And at corner, Adoree Jackson is no longer in Philly. So there's a lot of coming and going in Philly, just like there is with every other team. That's why we're trying to familiarize you with the roster changes this season. Let's talk about that A.J. Brown trade real quick. You know, A.J. Brown, he wanted out of there. You could see him in an altercation with the head coach in the 49er playoff game. I mean, the security guys had to break him up. Hey, he wanted out of there. Well, Howie Roseman says, yeah, I'll get you out of here, but I need to get what I want in terms of compensation. Roseman wanted a 1, and guess what he got from New England? He got a first-round pick. So A.J. Brown, one of the most decorated wide receivers in Philadelphia Eagle history, is no longer in Philly. And that's a lot of production, man, that you got to replace. And until you do, you haven't done it. What happened to Philadelphia in 2025? You know, you win the Super Bowl in such convincing fashion against the Kansas City Chiefs. Something happened to this team. And offensively, in particular, it didn't look good. They took a real step back, finishing 24th in the league on offense. So Nick Sirianni, he shook things up. The body language didn't look right to me. The players didn't look like they were engaged with one another. Something was wrong, so changes needed to be made. And in that loss, that 23-19 loss to the 49ers, it just didn't look good on offense at the end of the game. I mean, they got 4 plays at the 20-yard line to win the game. It's a 4-point game. And the 49ers played cover 4, cover 4, cover 4, cover 4. What coverage were they playing, Jake?
4.
Cover 4. And the last play of the game on 4th and 11, the Eagles threw 4 verticals into cover 4. I mean, what the hell? Changes need to be made. The running game, shockingly, fell to 18th in the league. And you got Saquon Barkley coming off a 2,000-yard season. You play the Dallas Cowboys, who had the worst Cowboy defense in the history of the Cowboys. The Washington Commanders had the worst defense in the history of whatever the hell they are, Commanders football team or Redskins. And the New York Giants, their running game was the worst in the history of the world. So something had to be done, and it's going to be interesting to see if these changes wake up the Eagles. I hope they do. Philadelphia has surprisingly the 10th easiest schedule this year, according to the won-loss percentages. That's good news for Philly. They do have some long trips. They got to fly all the way to Arizona, fly all the way to San Francisco, and I know they got to go fly to play a game in London. So I hope the team really enjoys each other's company because these airplane trips last forever. Philly's got 5 primetime games, and when we start flexing the schedules after about week 8, don't be surprised if the Eagles aren't on primetime every week because they got a lot of primetime players. We're going to get into it. This team has great continuity. Head coach, GM, quarterback, defense. And in special teams, they're running it back with Jake Elliott. Even though his numbers were down last year, 20 for 27 in field goals, this is a world champion kicker, and he's an iceman in clutch situations. They brought back their punter, Braden Mann. He was 5th in the NFL with a 49.9-yard net. Why don't I just say a 50-yard net? I don't know. They got good returners. Will Shipley. I mean, this Britton Covey guy, say what you want. He's dangerous back there as a returner. And I love the fact that the Philadelphia Eagles take care of the football. I mean, look at this turnover ratio. They took it away 21 times, only turned it over 15. That's +6. There's a lot to like about the Eagles. Let's get into their offense. Okay, let's take a look at the Philadelphia Eagle offense. I think this is the most significant overhaul in the Nick Sirianni, Howie Roseman era. They got a new offensive coordinator, Sean Mannion. And I heard rumors that they were interested in getting a veteran coach like Brian Daboll or Mike McDaniel, but they went with the young Sean Mannion, former quarterback coach of the Green Bay Packers. They also lost their great offensive line coach, Jeff Stoutland. And trust me, after being in the NFL a long time coaching, an offensive line coach is very important. They also traded one of the great receivers in the history of the Philadelphia Eagles, A.J. Brown. That's a lot of change, man. You know, Philadelphia has a trend. Nick Sirianni, if you're the offensive coordinator for the Eagles, if you win the Super Bowl, you get a head coaching job. That's what happened to Shane Steichen and Kellen Moore. If you don't win the Super Bowl, you get fired. That's what happened to Brian Johnson and Kevin Patullo. One and done. So there's a lot of pressure, believe me. I was offensive coordinator for Philadelphia for 3 years. You know, there's a lot of pressure out there. You either feel pressure or you apply pressure. Let's go, Mannion. The Eagles were disappointing last year statistically. 19th in scoring, 24th in total, 18th in running it, and 23rd in passing it. And the Philadelphia Eagles have the most expensive offense in pro football. Don't kid yourself. Take a look at this. In 2025, the Eagles had $249 million they spent on their offense. Whew. And this year it's going to be over $250. So if the numbers don't compute and we're spending that kind of money, changes will be made, which we talked about. In 22 to 24, the Eagles were third in the NFL, 27 points a game, fifth with 370 yards a game, second in rushing, over 152 yards a game. But in 2025, with all this money on this roster, the Eagles averaged just 22 points a game, 24th in the league with 310 yards a game, and 18th in rushing. So Howie Roseman looked at that and he says, we're not getting what we're paying for. We're going to make some changes. Who is Sean Mannion? Well, he played quarterback at Oregon State. He's a third-round pick by the Rams. He played in the league for about 9 years as a backup, only 6 or 7 career starts. He's only been coaching for a few years. I mean, he was the quarterback coach last year of the Packers with Jordan Love. But Mannion has been in Minnesota with Kevin O'Connell. He's been around Shanahan and McVay, those types of systems. LaFleur in Green Bay. McVay and Shanahan, those 3 guys are like from the same family. Those guys come from my family. You know that? I love these guys. Mannion's a great guy. He's been in here at the FFCA. I think he's going to do a heck of a job. The one thing I love about Mannion the most is he's a coach's son. I used to try to hire a lot of coaches' sons when I was a coach because I think they grow up understanding how hard this profession is. There's a respect for work because they've seen their dads do it. His dad was a very good coach. He used to follow him around when he was 7 years old, making scouting reports. Mannion has always wanted to be a coach, even when he was a player, and this is his shot. Fortunately for him, he inherits one hell of a team, a high-paid team too. What are the changes I think you will see in a Sean Mannion offense that you haven't seen? Well, I think they're going to get under the center a lot more than they have in recent years. And I think Jalen Hurts is going to have to open his mind and his heart to some new ideas. They're not going to be a one-dimensional shotgun operation. I think they're going to get under the center more, they're going to use a lot more motion, and they're going to get the ball to Saquon from the dot. And they're going to set up some bootlegs and nasty play-action passes just like the Rams, the 49ers, and the Packers use. That's where Mannion's brain trust comes from. The Eagles last year to me were hard to watch, very frustrating. Do you know they had 50 3-and-outs? That's tied for the most in the NFL. And when you go 3-and-out, what do the fans say, Jake?
Ooh.
What do they say, Clay? What do they say in Philly, though?
Fuck you.
Exactly. And it's frustrating, man. And it really affects your defense. It affects field position. And it really, I don't know, even screws me up here when I see a 3-and-out. So not only is Mannion by himself, I think this is big. They got a new offensive line coach. Jeff Stoutland was great. He's gone. Who's the replacement? It's Chris Cooper, former offensive lineman with the Broncos. He was the O-line coach in Minnesota. I've heard he wasn't extended. But he comes in here with Mannion to take over this decorated offensive line. Josh Grizzard, former offensive coordinator here in Tampa, let go after a year. He is the pass game coordinator. The run game coordinator is Ryan Mahaffey. Ryan Mahaffey was the wide receiver coach in Green Bay the last 2 years. He was the assistant offensive line coach in Green Bay for a year. But this is a very young staff given the keys to a very pricey offense. I can't wait to see it. But I think it's a sales job. They got to sell this system to Jalen Hurts. They got to get him to buy into it. You know, Jalen Hurts' career, he's only been underneath the center 15% of the time. That means 85% of the time he's been in a gun. He's comfortable in the gun. He can catch the ball and keep his eyes on the defense. He can see the coverage rotations. He's comfortable playing like that. But when you're underneath the center, a lot of times you got to turn your back to the defense to make these great fakes. A lot of quarterbacks aren't comfortable with that. And I think it's going to have to be sold to Jalen Hurts. Show him the cut-ups of Stafford and Love and Purdy, turning their back to the defense, getting big plays off of play action. I think it's a real important time right now until opening kickoff that Hurts continues to buy into these new schemes and playing from under the center. You know, Hurts is one of the more polarizing quarterbacks in football. Seems like when Philadelphia wins, it's like, whoa, what a great job our defense did. What a great job Barkley did. And then when Philly loses, it's like, what the hell's the coach doing? What the hell is Hurts doing? I mean, when you look at Jalen Hurts, you know, this past season he threw for 25 touchdowns. That's more than he's ever thrown for in his life. He's a fantastic dual threat. I mean, this guy has 63 career rushing touchdowns. He's run the ball for almost 3,500 yards. This guy's a really good player. He's in his 7th season, and his regular season win percentage is 57-25. That's 3rd, just behind Mahomes and Lamar Jackson. He's a winner, and he's proven to be productive in just about any kind of system. This is his 6th offensive coordinator in 7 years. Are you kidding me? Can't we all just get along? Hurts has 3 years left on a monster contract. Let's understand that. He signed a 5-year, $230 million contract. We got 3 years to go. Wouldn't it be great if Sean Mannion and Jalen Hurts hit it off and they put together one hell of a 3-year run? I think so. But all this change that we're talking about, it's going to have to be based on trust. They're going to have to trust each other. And they're going to have to go through some peaks and valleys during training camp and early in the season like we all do putting a new offense in. Last year, Saquon Barkley became a research project. The guy ran for 2,000 yards in 2024, Offensive Player of the Year. Then he rushes for 500 yards and multiple touchdowns in the playoffs. But in the offseason, I think defenses said, we got to take that man away. They started loading the box and playing a lot of zone coverage. And that combination forced the Eagles to have to win with Jalen Hurts' arm. And I don't think the pass offense, the structure of the plays, was ready for that. The dynamic in the quarterback room is going to be a lot different. Not only the plays, perhaps the snap count, but now you got the Red Rifle Andy Dalton as a backup quarterback. Dalton did a great job as a starter for Cincinnati. Hell, my brother was his offensive coordinator. He got my brother a head coaching job. And Dalton did a great job in Carolina helping Bryce Young through some rough patches. Perhaps he can help Jalen Hurts with all of his experience, just like he helped Bryce in Carolina. They also added Cole Payton, an athletic quarterback out of North Dakota State. But I want to know, what are they going to do with Tanner McKee? Tanner McKee, when he has been asked to play, he has played pretty good. So there's 4 quarterbacks in Philly. Not a lot of snaps these days in training camp. It'll be interesting to see how they distribute the reps. The running back, the man, is Saquon Barkley. We all know what a spectacular season he had in 2024, but look at the drop-off. 2,005 yards in 24, all the way down to 1,140 in 2025. That's significant. That's almost half of what he made. 5.8 yards per carry in 2024, 4.1 in 2025. What the hell's going on, you ask? Look at this. He had 4 runs of 20 yards or more this past season. He had 17 in 2024 when he was the offensive MVP. But what was really stunning to me was the amount of times that Barkley was stuffed. 24% of his runs in 11 personnel, 1 back and 1 tight end, were stuffed. 24%, that's 1 out of 4, 0 or negative yards. Do you know that he was hit behind the line of scrimmage on 132 of his carries? Can you imagine Saquon Barkley getting a handoff and getting hit in the backfield 132 times? And on those 132 rushes, he averaged 0.7 yards per carry. So that's why the numbers are down. Too many negative plays, too many run-through linebackers. Perhaps there's a lot of loaded boxes, and Philadelphia didn't take advantage with A.J. Brown and Devonta Smith. No wonder A.J. Brown's like, what the hell is going on? Perhaps that caused some friction down on the field. Negative yardage running plays, good God, that's as hard as it gets on a coach and on a football team. The wide receiving core, we've talked about the changes. You know, when you let A.J. Brown go, remember this, Philadelphia had gone 7 straight seasons without a 1,000-yard receiver until Howie Roseman traded for A.J. Brown. And A.J. Brown walked in here, he had over 1,400 yards in back-to-back seasons. This guy was a badass, especially on the backside of trips. If you singled him up, he would kill you, man. I remember when I was in Philly, Irving Fryer had 2 great years, 96 and 97. He changed the way defenses played against Ricky Waters in our great running game. So you got to have receivers that take the pressure off the running game and vice versa. A.J. Brown scared defenses, and they're going to miss him. We already talked about Jahan Dotson, their 3rd receiver. He's also gone. So what does Philadelphia do? They're going to turn to Devonta Smith, and he's obviously going to be their go-to number 1 receiver. Smith can play in the slot. He can play out wide. The numbers of Smith in the slot have gradually increased every season. Shit, he was inside the slot 57% of the time last year. This is a versatile, badass, great receiver. Former Heisman Trophy winner in his career in Philly averages 77 grabs and 1,004 yards per season and 6 touchdowns a year. The guy's got great twitch, he has speed and quickness, and he can really make some bad ball receptions, and he's a hell of a premier competitor. He's going to be the number 1 receiver. What is Mekhi Lemon going to be for Philly? I don't think he's just going to be a slot receiver. But here's a guy that won the Biletnikoff Award as the number 1 receiver in college football. Lemon was 8th in the country with 1,156 yards receiving. He was 9th in the country with 11 touchdown grabs. And in the Big Ten, nobody had more yards after the catch than Mekhi Lemon. He's not the biggest guy, but he has great playing stature. He plays big. He makes contested catches. He's a good blocker. He's durable, tough as hell. And I hate to say it, he does remind me of that kid in Detroit, Amon-Ra St. Brown. I mean, they went to the same college, they have the same style of play. And Lemon doesn't drop passes. The 3 years I saw him, he might have dropped 1 pass a year in the 3 years I saw him. This guy is reliable as hell. The other receiver that's very interesting, fantasy football fans, is Dontavian Wicks. The guy comes over from Green Bay. I like this guy. If you watched him play last year against Detroit, late in the year, he has 6 catches, like 100 yards, 2 touchdowns, tap on the sidelines, big wide out, young wide out, hungry wide out. Great combination. This kid has 108 catches for 1,400 yards and 11 touchdowns in Green Bay, and he really hasn't been used as a primary focal point of their offense. He's hungry, Lemon's hungry, and you know Smith is hungry, and these guys are really eager, I think, to prove they can step up with the loss of A.J. Brown. Hey, Philadelphia doesn't just have those 3 receivers. They have this Johnny Wilson guy from Florida State. He's still standing on the sidelines. The dude is 6'6", and he can really be a red zone jump ball, go get it guy. He's going to compete for playing time. They kept this Darius Cooper guy last year from Tarleton State. We're watching him in the preseason against Cincinnati. I'm saying, who the hell is that guy? And Jake says, that's Darius Cooper. I don't even know where Tarleton State is, but now I do because of Darius Cooper. And then they got Hollywood Brown, the ex-Kansas City Chief. Remember a couple years ago, Brown had over 1,000 yards with the Baltimore Ravens. He had that sternum injury in 2024. He did have 590 yards and 5 touchdowns as a Chief last year. So they do have quality players, a lot of good depth, and they're going to have some real competition in training camp. But what's really exciting about this Sean Mannion offense, I think, is how they're going to deploy tight ends. They bring back Dallas Goedert to a 1-year, $7 million contract. Goddard had 11 touchdown catches, the most of his career, 10 of them in the red zone, la-ti-da-ti-da. You know what Goddard does? He fucking blocks, man. He's one of these tight ends that can block in the core. He can be at the point of attack on the power plays. He can cut off on the wide zone on the backside. He can pass protect. Goddard is a hell of a tight end. And the second round has been very good for Philly when drafting tight ends. What round was Goddard drafted in, Jake?
Second.
What round was Zach Ertz taken?
Second.
And who did they take in the second round this year? Eli Stowers out of Vanderbilt. And I'm telling you, if I'm a fantasy football fan, this is my guy. I think this kid has a chance to be rare. I mean, look at this guy's combine. He breaks a record at the combine with an 11'3" broad jump. How about a 45.5-inch vertical? Is that sick? And the guy runs 4.51. He's the Texas high school high jump champion. The guy goes to Texas A&M as a quarterback. Then he says, I'm going to go to New Mexico State, play tight end. Does well. Then he goes to Vanderbilt, and he wins the John Mackey Award as the top tight end in the country. How the hell does Howie Roseman get the Blitnikoff winning receiver and the Mackey winning tight end? That guy must be either lucky or one hell of a GM, probably both. Stowers is 6'4", 235 pounds, and yes, he's going to spend a lot of his time detached. So I think you're going to see Goddard in the core as a conventional tight end. Don't be shocked if you see Stowers all over the place, in the slot, out wide, mismatch freak. This guy could really be a special ad, home run pick in the second round for Howie Roseman. They also brought back Grant Calcaterra. He's played a lot of football. We talked about the two tight ends they signed in free agency. Johnny Munt from Jacksonville. They got Stone Smart. They got 5 tight ends. And at running back, we know Barkley is the feature horse. But don't forget about this Tank Bigsby guy. They got this Tank Bigsby guy from Jacksonville last year. Every time he gets in the game and gets the ball, it's like the last run of his life. Ah! This guy's mad. He runs his ass off. 344 yards. I love Bigsby. Will Shipley's there. They signed Damian Pierce. And they have a battle, I think, at fullback. The ex-Kansas City Chief, Carson Steele, and Cameron Latu. They can get into 21 and 22 personnel by using these two men as a fullback. So a lot of competition in the backfield, intense competition at quarterback and wide receiver. And ask me about the offensive line, Clay.
What about him?
Most importantly, keep an eye on Chris Cooper. He's the new offensive line coach. He's replacing Jeff Stoutland. Those are big shoes to fill. But Cooper's a young guy. They're going to feature the outside zone. They're going to get underneath the center, and I love it. Because when you get underneath the center, you accommodate the running back. And Saquon Barkley, no disrespect to all these slow developing shotgun runs, get them back there 7.5 to 8 yards deep. Didn't Ricky Williams light up when he was in there talking about that? Get him some force going toward the line of scrimmage. Get him time to read his cuts. Let him bounce it to the outside, cut it up or cut it back. Give Saquon Barkley some time to make some real great shit happen. So I look for that. Left tackle, Jordan Mailata, great player. Beat up last year. They need him to return to his form. He still had a hell of a year last year. PFF ranked him as the 6th best tackle. At left guard, Landon Dickerson. The guy has had 12 surgeries. He was contemplating retirement. Thank God he came back. He is vicious. Hopefully he's feeling good and stays healthy. Cam Jurgens. This guy replaces Kelsey at center. He's gone to back-to-back Pro Bowls. Number 51, Jurgens is a badass. At right guard, Tyler Steen. Last year was his first year as a starter. Usually second-year starters show the most improvement. They need him to play better. And at right tackle, it's the 6-time Pro Bowl Lane Johnson. Did you like meeting Lane Johnson at the Super Bowl, Jake?
Yeah.
We had a chance to sit down with him. We'll let you hear a few of his words.
What kind of leader are you, and how do you handle adversity with the team when things aren't going good?
Yeah, well, I see, does how that, external stuff, does that affect your work ethic or your preparation? So, I think Signetti said it really good. Talk about preparation. He doesn't get caught up on the circumstances of the game, whether you're winning or you're losing, how he lost the Super Bowl to them. It's like, I try to play every play the same and keep all that But, as far as talking, I talk some, a lot in my line room, as far as the team. I will, but I think a lot of actions and how you approach every day, the Mondays, the Tuesdays, the Wednesdays after the game where everybody's beat the shit and how are you lifting in the weight room? What are your numbers looking like? How are you competing every day? So I think that separates yourself throughout time. And so I think all that work can speak for itself.
But Johnson, I think it was week 11, he had that Liz Frank foot injury. And when he went down, I felt this whole offense went down with him. He's a leader, he's a playmaker, and he really has the quarterback's trust over there on that right side. But remember this, they went out and drafted Markel Bell out of Miami. Listen to this, Jake. He's going to go over here at right tackle and learn from one of the great guys and great complete players in Lane Johnson. You know how big Markel Bell is? How about 6'9", 346 pounds. You know these wingspans, like if you go from your pointer finger to pointer finger, that's 7'3". That's like a two-car garage, man. Markel Bell, he played left tackle for the Canes, and 1,000+ snaps. How many sacks did he give up? 0. This guy could be another steal for Philadelphia. I love the fact that he's over here with Lane Johnson and then coming over here with Jordan Mailata. That's a beautiful swing tackle. They re-signed Fred Johnson, who's come into action and played quite well for Philly. They also have 2 interior young guys competing for depth. Miles Hinton from Michigan and Drew Kendall, a former 5th-round pick out of Boston College. We already talked about them signing Michael Jordan, an inside swing guard. So they have quality players, depth, and they got a new offensive line coach and a new system that's worth watching. Let's get into the defense. Okay, the Philadelphia Eagle defense still is formidable, and they're still led by the great defensive coordinator, Vic Fangio. Fangio, there were rumors he might retire. I know he's 67 years old, but I hear he's committed for at least a couple more years, and that's good news for Philly. This is one of the best defensive coaches. What does he do well? He develops players. He's a great teacher, and he adapts his scheme every year. It doesn't always stay the same. And he's had a lot of young defensive coaches on his tree go out and do great things in the NFL. So Philly's got a great defensive coordinator, and they have a lot of talent and continuity on all 3 levels of their defense. Statistically, last year they were solid, but they took a step back from a numbers standpoint from their Super Bowl season in 2024. Remember, in 2024, this was the number 1 defense, the number 1 pass defense, the number 2 scoring defense, and they were number 10 against the run. But last year they fell. They were 13th in total defense, 8th against the pass, and for Vic Fangio, it's still in the top 10, but it seems like Vic Fangio has one of the top 2 or 3 pass defenses every year. They fell to 22nd last year against the run, and they still ranked 5th in the league in scoring defense, so there were some good things, but the numbers fell off slightly on defense as well. I think Philadelphia is really excited to add 2 new veteran starters to this defense. They went out and traded with the Minnesota Vikings to get edge rusher Jonathan Grenard. Grenard had a great season in Houston, 12 sacks, goes to Minnesota, has 12 sacks. Last year he only had 3 sacks, battling shoulder injuries, but Grenard is a draft day trade, and then Howie Roseman locks him up for big money. He addresses a huge need, that edge rush, impact player. And then to go out and get Rick Woolen to play opposite Quinyon Mitchell, that is huge. Last year, Fangio and his staff had to jerry-rig what to do at corner opposite Quinyon Mitchell. Rick Woolen signs a 1-year contract, 6'4", formidable ball skills. Man, this guy's got a lot of picks, but those are 2 new quality players to add to this defense. They got to improve on 3rd down. Last year the numbers were down. They were 3rd in the NFL in 2024, but last year they fell to 21st. They didn't get off the field as regularly. I think the Eagles got a little tired last year. There were some games where this offense really struggled. They had 50 3-and-outs. So when you're on defense and your offense is going 3 and out, You don't even have a chance to get water. You don't have a chance to have a conversation or make an adjustment. So I think the offensive improvements this year can help the defense improve, and they can become a double-edged sword like they were in 2024. They don't blitz a lot. We all know that about Vic Fangio. After the Week 9 bye last year, I saw the Eagles only blitz 16% of the time. They were blitzing 26% of the time before that, so that number obviously was reduced significantly down the stretch. The Eagles play a lot of split safety coverages, but they disguise as well as anybody. You're going to see a single high defense turn into split safeties. You'll see split safeties turn into single high defenses. Fangio and his coaches do a great job disguising coverages, and when they do play split safeties, it doesn't mean you know what coverage it is. It might be 4 deep zone. It might be rotation strong or rotation weak. They might play cover 2 and rotate on both sides. So they do a great job mixing coverages, disguising coverages, and their underneath coverage is really where the rubber meets the road. They know how to match patterns underneath. They know where their help is, and these guys can really key the quarterback and drive on the ball and make some plays. They have a pass game coordinator named Joe Casper, and I just love the way Vic Fangio and this staff prepare. They see what an offense does throwing the ball, and they're going to take that away and make you play left-handed. So if you're a one-dimensional, clapping quarterback that doesn't have a lot of arsenal, good luck. You know, when you play a lot of split safety coverages, obviously you take both safeties out of the box, you're running into some light boxes. But Philadelphia has always been able to stop the run with these light boxes, and a lot of it has to do with their front. They have 3 really good players on this defensive line: Jordan Davis, Jalen Carter, and Moro Ajoma. I like these guys, man. They're young, and they can play the run, and they can transition into pass rush mode in a hurry. Jordan Davis got a huge contract last year, and he deserves it. He played 61% of the time. He showed a lot more stamina. He had a lot more production, and the man got paid. Jalen Carter only played 11 games. Shoulder injuries. They tell me he's working out good. He's stronger, and he's ready to roll. He played 84% of the snaps until he got hurt. And Moro Ajoma, he played 65% of the snaps. That was a career high for him. But those 3 men playing inside really set a tone for this Philadelphia Eagle defense. You know, I look at this defensive line, and I'm really excited to see number 90, Jordan Davis, play. He batted down 6 passes. He blocks field goals. He has 72 tackles. He's a great run stuffer. He has 4.5 sacks and 22 pressures. And this is one big Philadelphia Eagle. Jalen Carter, surprisingly, took a setback last year. It started in that first game against the Cowboys when he was kicked out, I think before the game started, for spitting or something. But his pass rush numbers have diminished during his 3-year career. He had 6 in 2023, 4.5 in 2024, just 3 last year. The pressures have gone down, 47 to 45, just 29 last year. This is a big year for him. I believe it's a contract year. And they got to get more out of him even when he's getting double teamed. You know, when you don't blitz, Clay, when you don't blitz, that doesn't mean you can't get to the quarterback with a 4-man rush. But offenses aren't stupid. They can put a tight end over here to chip against Jonathan Grenard, and they get a double. They can put a back over here to chip on this defensive end. They can double him. And then they can set the center one way. They usually set the center to Jalen Carter, so they get a double on Carter. That's why it's important for Davis to continue to kick ass. But I saw Carter have a lot of success whooping double teams' asses in 2023 and 2024. I didn't see that as much in 2025. I hope Carter's listening to me. I kind of put him up there with Reggie White, Jerome Brown, Fletcher Cox. We need Carter to get healthy, stay healthy, and get 14 cases of whoop ass in Veterans Stadium. What do they call it now? Lincoln Financial? I worked at the vet, man. There were cats walking around the vet. They're big cats. I said to the security guy, "What's with these cats?" The guy said, "The cats eat the rats. You want cats or rats?" I said, "I'll take the cats." Interesting guys to look at on this defensive line as backups. The ex-Las Vegas Raider, number 94, Byron Young, did some good things. Number 95, backup defensive tackle Ty Robinson, 4th-round pick out of Nebraska. Let's go. And they also got Cade Hall from Baylor. I think he's an undrafted dude. But you talk about big, 6'6", 300 pounds. Philly has some guys getting off the bus that look the part. But keep an eye out of this draft pick they got out of Nigeria. Uar Bernard. I hope I'm saying it right. Listen to these measurables. The guy's 6'4", 306. He ran 4.6. I mean, he comes from this international pathway program where the Eagles found Jordan Mailata, their great left tackle. This guy's got 6% body fat. Kind of reminds me of myself. The guy can jump. He's got great explosion, 40-inch vertical. He's wearing number 93. So during the preseason, you're going to see a lot of this guy. Let's get behind him, man. They might have a steal here. They need a lot more production from their edge rushers. That's why they went out and got Jonathan Grenard, the ex-Minnesota Viking. They paid him a lot of money, $98 million for 4 years. They think Grenard's best football is ahead of him. They still have Nolan Smith. They picked up his 5th-year option, the former 1st-round pick out of Georgia. Only had 3 sacks last year, just 31 tackles, but he had 35 pressures. Remember, during the Super Bowl season in 2024, Smith had 6.5 in the regular season, 4 more in the playoffs. They expected Smith to go off last year. Didn't really happen. And then he got a speeding ticket going 135 and a 70. Come on, man. Be careful. We got to get you healthy back on the grass. This guy needs to have a huge year. They got to get more consistency from Nolan Smith. But he and Grenard, they're on the same team now. That competition should serve them well. Perhaps the biggest story in Philadelphia in terms of edge rushers is Jalix Hunt. I mean, this kid wears number 58. You talk about a guy on the rise. I don't even know the college he came from. I don't know where it is. I've never heard of it. He went to Houston Christian. Where is Houston Christian? I've heard of Texas Christian, but not Houston Christian. But this guy last year had 62% play time. He had 35% as a rookie. He had 6.5 sacks that led the Eagles, 24 QB hits and 57 pressures. This guy is a force to be reckoned with. His star is on the rise. They signed Arnold Ebiketie from the Atlanta Falcons. They went out and signed A.J. Epinesa, the former high-effort player with the Buffalo Bills. Epinesa's got 24 career sacks. He's been on some big-time defenses in Buffalo, and he's a high-effort dude. But when you have this many edge rushers, this much competition, that bodes well for Philly. They can get the inside rush with Davis and Carter. They get the edge rush with Nolan Smith and Grenard, Jalix Hunt, Ebiketie, Epinesa. Whew, sounds good, doesn't it? And at linebacker, I think one of Vic Fangio's greatest success stories is Zach Bond. Remember Zach Bond, 4 years in New Orleans. He's a special teams player. He comes to Philly, and he goes to back-to-back Pro Bowls. This man is all pro. He's got great instincts, great communication. He wears the green dot. Guy's a badass, man. He has over 125 tackles, incredible ability to get the ball out. Interceptions, forced fumbles, fumble recoveries. He's got great ball production. He just signed a 3-year, $51 million deal. And instead of Bond having to learn to play off the ball, having to learn the nuances of a Vic Fangio defense, I think now he's mastered it. Now he's really focusing on the offenses, and I think he's going to get some real jumps. I look for Bond to have a huge year this year. The other linebacker will be Jihad Campbell. He switched his number to number 11. He was a first-round pick in last year's draft out of Alabama. He started the season inside with Bond, but when Nakobe Dean came back, his role diminished. But they love Campbell, man. This guy's got some production, almost 70 tackles last year, and he's going to be in year 2 of Fangio's system. He is big, explosive, and he's got some twitch. They got 2 quality young backups. This Smile Munden guy out of Georgia, he's a quality player, can play on special teams, and Jeremiah Trotta Jr., these are 2 very good backups that can play if necessary. So they have a good front 7. But I think with the addition of Rick Woolen, I think they got a chance to really be outstanding in the secondary. Okay, Quinyon Mitchell is one of the Pro Bowl performers the Eagles have. I mean, this guy has 4 interceptions in 5 playoff games. He had 2 against the 49ers in the wild card game. You know what's strange? He has 0 in the regular season. In 32 career starts in the regular season, he has 0. That's a strange stat. But when you look at the target reel, Quinyon Mitchell last year, he's targeted 87 times. He only gives up 38 catches. I mean, the QBR against Quinyon Mitchell is 54.4. And if you really study Mitchell the last 10 or 11 weeks, I see him as the boundary corner. What's the boundary corner, Jake? Ask me.
What is it?
Well, you look at the field, and if there's 2 hash marks, if the ball's on this left hash mark, the short side of the field, the boundary is to the left. So Mitchell plays into the boundary. If the ball's on the right hash, the boundary or the short side is on the right, he'll go over there and play into the short side of the field. I believe that allows him to have to cover less grass, and maybe they can load up coverage on the other side. But Fangio does a great job deploying Mitchell. He can go right or left. He can do a lot of things. But he's really, I think, on the cusp of having a breakout season with interceptions. The other Pro Bowl defender they have is Cooper DeJean. Good God, what a great player he is. His role will change this year. I think they're going to play him at safety in their base defense. In your base defense, you have 4 defensive backs. In your nickel defense, you have 5. DeJean has always been in the nickel. He's been in the slot. But when you go to a base defense, when teams come out with 2 tight ends or 3 tight ends, 2 backs, DeJean's on the sideline 20% of the game. So I think you'll see DeJean playing back here opposite Andrew Makuba in base defensive situations. But if you want to play 11 personnel and be wide open, they're going to have Mitchell into the boundary. They're going to have Cooper DeJean, number 33, waiting on your slot receiver. And I can't wait to see DeJean going up against Eli Stowers and Mekhi Lemon, these 2 rookies in training camp. You know, Cooper DeJean, I'm told he's been studying one of my old draft picks, Charles Woodson. Maybe he's learning how to be a dime linebacker, how to play safety, to be a game-changing weapon in terms of his versatility. Second on the team, 85 tackles. He has 2 interceptions. I mean, this guy, he's got a 55 QBR against him. Has he allowed a touchdown pass in coverage in 2 years, Jake?
Nope.
No, he has not. The other corner, I think they welcome Rick Woolen, the ex-Seattle Seahawk. He's 27 years old. He signs a 1-year contract. He's allowed less than an 80 QBR in his 4 years as a Seattle Seahawk. I mean, when you look at this guy's ability at 6'4" to tower over you and move and mirror your receivers, and he's got some great ball production, 12 interceptions in his 64 career games. And if you get open against him and you get a step on him, he has one of those lacrosse long stick arms. Poop! He'll just bat that sumbitch away. Just don't have any more of those taunting penalties late in the game, Reek. But this could be a great addition opposite Quinyon Mitchell with DeJean in the slot. Wow. The safety men, this is an area Philly has a lot to prove. Andrew Makuba, 2nd-round pick out of Texas 2 years ago, returns as a starting safety. He wears number 24. He hurt that ankle in week 11 last year and was done for the season. But he's a good player. He had 46 tackles, 2 interceptions. He got that tip off of Kelsey in the Kansas City game in the end zone. Remember it? This guy's on the rise, man. And then I think there's going to be real competition at the opposite safety. And they're led by Marcus Epps. Epps is a good player. He was a good player at Wyoming. He's played good in the NFL for a while. He's going to get, I think, the opening day nod, but he will be challenged by the ex-New York Jet Michael Carter and J.T. Gray, a young cat out of LSU, I believe, that they really like. I love this Philadelphia defense. I think it starts at the top with Vic Fangio. The front, they got some young inside guys that can raise hell. They've got multiple players coming off the edge now. We've talked about it. And inside, they got a Pro Bowl linebacker with Jihad Campbell playing right next to him. 3 excellent cover corners. Got to prove it at safety. But this is going to be a heck of a defense. I picked Philadelphia to win the East in runaway fashion. They got to come together as a team. They got to get this offense to rock, and they're going to be damn hard to deal with. The last team we'll talk about is the Washington Commanders. They're an interesting story. Stay tuned. Okay, the Washington Commanders. What do you think of this shirt? You like it, Clay?
Love it.
Who is this receiver? You guys know? Charlie freaking Taylor, one of my favorite all-time Redskin Commander football people. Anyways, the Washington Commanders. What a season they had in 2024. Magical season. New head coach Dan Quinn, new quarterback Jaden Daniels. They go to the NFC Championship game. They win 12 games. But this past season was a train wreck, man. They had huge expectations going into the 2025 season. Coming off that 12-win, unbelievable run, they bring in Laramie Tunsil, left tackle. They bring in Deebo Samuel. They have all kind of things going. Marshawn Lattimore is supposed to be this shutdown corner, but they end up 5-12. They have an 8-game losing streak, multiple injuries, and there is a lot of change in Washington. They had one quality win last year, really. They beat Malisack's Chargers, and I'm glad they did. I'm not a Charger fan, as you know. But they beat the New York Giants twice, who were 4-13. They beat the 3-14 Las Vegas Raiders, and they beat the Eagles on the last game of the season when Philly rested a lot of their players. General Manager Adam Peters, who came to Washington with Quinn, basically, they have been signing a lot of veteran players. I mean, look at this. They brought in Zach Ertz, Bobby Wagner, traded for Lattimore. They brought in Von Miller. But now I think in this offseason, there's a real attempt to get younger and faster, and that's just what the Commanders accomplished. Let's take a look at the coming and going on this year's Commander team as they get ready for training camp. In the draft, they went out and got Sonny Styles, Ohio State Buckeye linebacker, freak of nature, man, 6'5", 240 pounds. He's essentially going to replace Bobby Wagner. This is a high-character guy, great leadership. We'll get into him in a minute. In the third round, they take Antonio Williams, wide receiver out of Clemson. He had a big year as a junior. Last year, he had some hamstring problems, but this is a really good receiver. He had 11 touchdown grabs 2 seasons ago. In the fifth round, they take Joshua Joseph, pass rusher from the University of Tennessee. Joshua Joseph's is interesting, but it's been helter-skelter. He's been up and down. In the 6th round, they took a 4,000-yard back from Penn State, Kalen Allen. Interesting player, man. This guy was really good at the end of games. And then in the 6th round, they take Matt Golban, center from Michigan State. Surprisingly, I think he's going to compete to be the starter. And in the 7th round, they get one of my Hula Bowl quarterbacks. I'm fired up to watch him. Ethan Kaliakmanis out of Rutgers. I called him Special K when I was in the Hula Bowl with him. Big, strong-arm quarterback. He'll play a lot in the preseason. In free agency, as we said, GM Adam Peters tried to get younger, not only in the draft, obviously, but in free agency. 12 of the 15 free agents that he signed are 29 years old or younger. I think that's a good move. But 2 of the biggest changes are the coordinators. You know, normally in your 3rd year as a head coach, all the coaches have been together. You start to grow together in your offense and your defensive scheme. You draft players to fit the scheme. Hell's bells, this is year 3 in Dan Quinn's run. He has 2 new coordinators. They let Cliff Kingsbury walk on offense. They let go of Joe Witt Jr. on defense. They signed David Blau, ex-quarterback coach of the Commanders, former player with the Detroit Lions, just a young coach to be the offensive coordinator. And Durante Jones, who was the pass game coordinator of the Minnesota Vikings, secondary coach. He comes to Washington as the new defensive coordinator. They also brought in a couple new running backs. Rashad White from the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, very good pass receiving back, and Jerome Ford of the Cleveland Browns. They brought in a couple new wide receivers. Van Jefferson comes over From the Titans, De'Ami Brown comes back to Washington from Jacksonville. So they've added a couple veteran wideouts. And they added a really good tight end that not a lot of people know about, and I love his name, Chig Okonkwo. He played for the Titans. He's had over 50 catches each of the last 3 seasons. And Anthony Firkser, former tight end with the Jets, he has more transactions in his career than any player in NFL history. But on defense is where they really move the needle, man. They needed to get younger. They needed to get faster. They needed to get better. So they went out and they brought in 3 new interior defensive linemen, starting with Tim Settle. He was drafted by Washington, went to Houston, played his ass off. This is a big guy that can stop the run, that has surprising pass rush. They brought in DJ Davidson, an inside player, and Charles Omenihu, who was recently with the Kansas City Chiefs. 3 new interior players. Well, where they really spent the money was on the edge. They went to the LA Chargers and they took Daffy Owe. They gave him $100 million for 4 years. This guy's young, he can rush the passer, and man, is he fast. And then they went to New England and took K'Lavon Chaisson. I know he's on his 3rd team, but this guy had 7.5 sacks for the AFC champion Patriots last year. They're going to have 2 new dynamic edge rushers in the nation's capital. That's exciting. They went to Kansas City and got one of my favorite Gruden grinders, Leo Chenal. And this guy can play everywhere, on the ball, off the ball, and he's a great special teamer. And then in the secondary, they got what I think is one of the sleepers in all of free agency. Has anybody heard of Nick Cross? Have you? I don't hear you. Nick Cross from the Colts. Fast as hell, man. 266 tackles his last 2 seasons. Only Buda Baker of Arizona has more than him. He's going to solidify a huge need in Washington. I love Nick Cross. Then they went out and got 2 corners. Former Raider Amik Robertson comes over from Detroit, started 10 games last year. And they get Akello Weatherspoon, who played for the 49ers when Adam Peters was the GM. He played really well as a Ram, started the first 6 games, hurt that scapula. But here's another tall, rangy corner that is going to compete to start, you will see. A lot of players coming into the Washington Commander locker room. But there's a lot of people going. We got to review this as well. Cliff Kingsbury, offensive coordinator 2 years ago. He's a hotshot head coaching candidate. I mean, Jaden Daniels is the Rookie of the Year. What the hell happened? I really don't know, but he's no longer in Washington. Joe Witt Jr., defensive coordinator, he's gone as well. He was with Dan Quinn for 6 years on 3 different teams. That's strange. Josh Johnson, veteran quarterback, was let go. 2 running backs you won't see in Washington anymore. Chris Rodriguez had 500 yards. Austin Eckler, who got hurt, I think it was week 2 and didn't come back, is no longer in Washington. And at wide receiver, they let their leading pass catcher, Deebo Samuel, walk. They also said goodbye to Noah Brown and Chris Moore. There's a lot of competition and new players on offense in Washington. They let tight end Zach Ertz go. Once again, he had 50 catches last year. And they let their center Tyler Biadasz go. Hell, he's playing for the Chargers. And on defense, multiple changes as well. Eddie Goldman, defensive tackle, gone. So is Jalen Holmes. And at edge rusher, they let Von Miller go. Von Miller had 9 sacks. They let Jacob Martin go. He had 5.5 sacks. Preston Smith, those 3 edge rushers are no longer there. Bobby freaking Wagner, he's not there. He was a big mentor to Jaden Daniels and a huge part of this success story we talked about in 2024. They let 2 defensive backs go. Noah, I call him Iggy because I have a hard time with his last name, and Jonathan Jones left to go to Philadelphia. A lot of coming and going on this Washington roster. So what the hell happened in 2025? I mean, really, it all starts, I think, in training camp. You know, you remember Terry McLaurin, a great receiver. He held out. He missed a lot of training camp. He missed the entire offseason program. They lost chemistry, and then McLaurin got hurt. That killed him. Jaden Daniels got hurt. Multiple injuries on this football team, and it was one after another, it appeared. And it was an old team. This was the oldest team in the NFL last year with an average age of 28.6. It was the oldest Washington team since Joe Gibbs coached them in 2007. And remember, Joe Gibbs can do whatever the hell he wants because he's a badass, okay? The Commanders got to improve in all areas. I mean, they were 22nd in total offense, 22nd in scoring offense, last in total defense, 29th in field goal percentage, and 31st in the turnover ratio. Say, oh, with me. Oh. Jesus. I mean, they took the ball away just 10 times, and they turned it over 23 times, a minus 13. That's 31st in the league. They had a league low 2 forced fumbles. That is absolutely impossible with Dan Quinn as your head coach. You know, the Commanders only recovered 2 fumbles last year. That was the worst in the league. That's impossible under Dan Quinn. I mean, Dan Quinn, when he was a defensive coordinator of Seattle, they won the Super Bowl, and they were killing people getting turnovers. And then in Dallas, can you remember all those turnovers they got? Good God. I think one of their defensive backs ran back 100 touchdowns. This is going to be an important training camp for Dan Quinn and these Commanders. I mean, they're going to have a lot of new coaches with new schemes and new players, and they got to have some healthier players. Hopefully, a lot of these guys return from injury. But what I sense coming out of Washington is a renewed confidence. Don't think for a second that you're ever going to play for a guy that's more positive and confident than Dan Quinn. And I think he's very confident in his new coordinators, and these players that he has brought in have energized him and this team. Remember, I told you first right here, they open up the season on the road for the first 2 weeks against division opponents at Philadelphia and then at Dallas. And then they got to play their home opener against the defending world champion Seahawks. Ooh, that's a tough start to the schedule. I'll bet they're embracing this. I would be shocked if they don't love it. You know, when you go 5-12, usually you get banished from primetime TV. I already told you the Giants, they were 4-13. They're going to be on primetime TV almost 5-6 times. Well, the Commanders are going to be on national TV 5 times as well. 2 times on Monday Night Football. At San Francisco, at home against Cincinnati. They get to play Sunday night against Philly, Thursday night against New York Giants. So I think people realize they got a stallion at quarterback. They got a lot of new players, and it is the nation's capital, you know. I think we got to keep an eye on the Washington Commanders special teams. You know, the kicker for the Commanders is like the drummer for Spinal Tap. It changes all the time. It's been 7 years since they've had a kicker for a full season rank in the top half of field goal accuracy. They've had 10 different kickers since 2020. I mean, what the hell's going on? The last really quality kicker they had was Dustin Hopkins in 2019. So right now, the incumbent kicker is Jake Moody, the ex-San Francisco 49er who was released and picked up by Washington at midseason. Moody was 10 for 11 on field goals, 10 for 11 on PATs. But if you're a fan out there of the Commanders, write this name down. Drew Stevens from Iowa, undrafted, picked up and signed by the Commanders. 4 years at Iowa. He's their all-time scorer and field goal kicker. He made 76 field goals, 12 of them from beyond 50. Longest kick was 58. He made 80% of his field goals, and he was 124 for 126 on PATs. So that's going to be a battle, Stevens versus Moody. The Commanders do have a Pro Bowl punter, Tress Way. They re-signed him. Tress Way is a badass. He's been to 3 Pro Bowls. They also have a really good punt returner, Jalen Lane, from one of my favorite colleges, Virginia Tech, man. 2 punt returns. Boy, doesn't that piss you off, Jake?
Yeah.
Okay. Just some things top of mind as we get into the offense. Daniels, Jaden's got to stay healthy. Terry Mack, he's got to stay healthy. If they are, this is a completely different team. Will the new offensive scheme enlighten everybody? And on defense, my man Cross, the new safety from the Colts. Is he what I think he is? New linebackers, Sonny Styles, Chenal. These edge rushers, are they worth all this money? Is the new defensive scheme and all this pressure going to be as advertised? And can we make some field goals consistently? Whoa, I'm fired up about the Commanders. Let's get into their offense. Okay, this Commanders offense has a new leader and offensive coordinator, David Blau. Remember, he's a young coach. He had played for the Detroit Lions, was with the Lions for 4 years, playing under Ben Johnson, the head coach of the Bears, who was the offensive coordinator at that time. Ben Johnson has a huge influence on David Blau. So you better start thinking Chicago Bear offense when you start thinking about the Commanders. They're going to be a lot different looking than they were under Cliff Kingsbury. You better believe me on that. Let's take a look at this Commander offense. Last year, 22nd in scoring, 22nd in total, 4th in rushing, 24th in passing. But the offense slipped mightily in 2025. In 2024, 28.5 points a game, down to 20 last year. They averaged 370 yards a game in 24, down to 319. Rushing was down, passing was down, third down was way down. So they took a step back. Why? Well, obviously the injuries. Shit, when you lose Jaden Daniels, you lose a lot. When you lose T-Mac, you lose a lot. And then they had a lot tougher schedule too. When you have a 12-5 team, you get a tougher schedule. You can't deny that. And they had some personnel changes big time. They have a new left tackle last year, Laramie Tunsil. They had to get Deebo Samuel incorporated in the offense. They had a rookie feature back. His name is Bill. So a lot was changing last year, and they had a bad defense. And when you're coaching on offense and you're calling plays, and you know you got to score every single possession because your defense is struggling, that takes its toll. I think the major change that you're going to see this year from the Commanders is a lot less no huddle. I mean, last year you saw shotgun, pistol formation, no huddle offense, play after play after play from Cliff Kingsbury. You're going to see a lot less no huddle from David Blau, probably about 20%. And I like that. I like the idea of changing speeds, you know? Go fast, slow down. Act like we're going fast, but play slow. Really try to piss off the defense. And I think Blau is going to do a great job of that. They're also going to get underneath the center and try to generate, I believe, a more sophisticated running game. And I think they're going to help their backs by getting them deeper in the I formation, giving them a chance to read their cuts as they approach the line of scrimmage, having a chance to cut it back. Instead of these slow developing shotgun runs, let's get this ball deep to the back and let them get downhill. You know, the Commanders only threw 18 passes last year from underneath the center. That's the lowest in the league. Kansas City was second lowest with 41. We won a Super Bowl in 2003. We didn't take one snap from the shotgun. Did you know that, Jake?
Yeah.
19 games, not one snap from the shotgun. Doesn't make me right or wrong, but that's just a fact. But guys are getting underneath the center a lot more on offense in the last year or so. Matter of fact, Ben Johnson and the Chicago Bears threw 175 passes in the gun last year. Sean McVay and the MVP Matt Stafford, 244 passes from the gun. Jaden Daniels had 18. So I think that number is going to change dramatically. You know, the play action passes off of some of these runs are going to be extraordinary. I love it. And you can hear the players talking about it. They're excited from the installations in the offseason program. You know, last year Washington threw a lot of play action passes according to statistics, but they were all in the shotgun. And a lot of the play action passes that I saw, they're RPOs. They're not play actions. There's a big difference between a play action and an RPO. You're running a running play and you're reading the linebacker. If the linebacker scrapes, you throw a pass. But the RPO is not hard ball play action like you do when you get underneath the center. And I can't wait to see Daniels turn his back to the defense, come out firing for T-Mac and this new hot shot wide receiver out of Clemson. The other thing is you're going to expect multiple tight end sets from David Blau. 12 personnel, 13 personnel, maybe 22 personnel. Matter of fact, the Chicago Bears last year, 45.5% of the time had multiple tight ends on the field. David Blau is going to do the same thing. Look at these tight ends. Okonkwo comes over from the Titans. He's going to be a feature. They have a second-round pick, Ben Sinnott from Kansas State. He's just kind of been hanging around here. Get him out there, let him play. And this John Bates, he will block your ass off. So I do look for some multiple tight end sets from Washington. Let's talk about Jaden Daniels. Everybody knows about his rookie season, 3,600 yards. He set a rookie record with 890 yards rushing, rookie record for 69% complete. Last year, he got hurt. He hurt his hamstring, he hurt his elbow, he hurt his knee, he got beat up. And I get the feeling he had a real bad taste in his mouth. You think Jaden Daniels likes sitting on the sidelines down there watching his team get their butt kicked? No. I think he's got a chip on his shoulder. I think he's going to come out firing, man, in 2026. He makes everybody better. His leadership, his energy, his style of play, man. He's accurate short. He's accurate deep. He can just make shit happen when there's nothing there. He scrambles a lot. 13% of his drop back passes as a rookie, he took off and ran. Last year, he took off and ran 15% of the time. I hope he starts transitioning into a Steve Young kind of player. Win in the pocket, win in the pocket. Win in the what, Jake?
Pocket.
And then if there's nothing there, we resort to scrambling. But we got to take, I think, the ball out of his hands as a runner a little bit, and we got to start getting him to really make plays in the pocket. Maybe less scrambling. He led the NFL with 595 scramble yards in 2024. 28 times he had 10 yards or more on these scrambles. Some of them are awesome. But perhaps him carrying the ball too much has led to this litany of injuries. I think he's got to win in the pocket, get to the check down, get through the progressions, get away from all these RPOs, which sometimes get dangerous. What's RPO stand for, Jake?
Ridiculous protection offense.
You don't want to be running an RPO against man or against blitz. Usually you get in deep shit. He's got to play better under pressure. Last year the numbers were down just 45% against the blitz, 62 QB rating, 3 touchdowns, 2 picks. You got to get great at RCE. And I think David Blau is going to help him. Recognizing blitzes, communicating the changes, and it'll lead us to high levels of execution. The run game is going to change. When you get underneath the center, I believe they're going to feature the wide zone to the tight end side and to the open side. And their leading rusher last year was named Bill. Ja'Cory Krosky Merritt. No wonder they call him Bill. Why the hell do you call him Bill if that's Ja'Cory Krosky Merritt? I don't see the exchange there, do you? But the Commanders did it by committee last year. Matter of fact, they had 5 guys with over 200 yards rushing and 1 or more touchdowns. That hasn't been done since the 22 49ers. Bill had 805 yards and 8 touchdowns as a rookie. Chris Rodriguez, who left, had 506 touchdowns. Marcus Mariota had 297 and a touchdown. Jaden Daniels had 278 and 2 touchdowns. And Jeremy McNichols had 221 and a score. 5 different backs with over 200 yards rushing and at least 1 touchdown. They're the only team in the league that did it. But this running back crew is going to be different. I think Bill is going to be the feature guy. They love him, and I do too. When you watch Ja'Cory Krosky Merritt, this guy's 9th in the NFL with plus 10 runs. He has very good vision. He's elusive. He has a hell of a stiff arm, and he packs some power, and he's durable. He was there all 17 games. He started 7. He's off to a great start. You imagine a 7th-round pick leading your team in rushing? They're really excited about this kid. But he does have to get better in a passing game. He just caught 6 passes last season. So getting better in pass protection, picking up blitzes, your route running and ball skills must improve to be a 3-down back. They went outside the ex-Tampa Bay Buccaneer Rachaad White. And I've always liked White. Hell, I watch the Bucs a lot. They're right down the street. You know, a few years ago, this guy had 1,550 all-purpose yardage, rushing and receiving. And then in 2024, it dipped to 1,000. And then last year, he had 790. So the numbers have fallen slightly. He becomes a free agent. I think he's going to take over in that Austin Eckler role. How many running backs have had over 40 catches the last 4 years, Jake? 1. Who is it? Rachaad White. Jerome Ford has been a good back in Cleveland. He's going to compete for some snaps. And keep an eye on this Katron Allen guy. I mean, over 4,000 yards rushing at Penn State. I think he's the #1 leading rusher in Nittany Lion history. And he was a 1-2 punch last year with Nicholas Singleton, who was a 5th-round pick of the Titans. But what I love about him is, yeah, he got 1,300 yards, 15 touchdowns. You know how much he averaged per carry in the fourth quarter, Jake? 8.2. So the guy got stronger as the game unfolded. At wide receiver, they need their great playmaker, Terry McLaurin, to come back healthy and to refocus his skills on being a 1,000-yard receiver. We're going to talk about him in a second. But who is T-Mac's wingman? Who's the number 2 receiver in Washington? We've already said that they've lost their top 2 pass receivers from a year ago. Deebo Samuel had 72. He's gone. Zach Ertz had 50. He's gone. Whew! I'm an owl. Who is going to be the guy opposite T-Mac that's going to step up? Fantasy football fans, keep an eye on number 14, the rookie, Antonio Williams out of Clemson. Dabo Sweeney's a good friend. He loves this guy. When you look at Antonio Williams 2 years ago, 75 for 900 plus yards and 11 touchdowns. Last year he has a hamstring. He misses a couple games. Just 55 for 604. Now, I don't have any idea what the hell happened at Clemson last year, but something wasn't right. But Antonio Williams, 78% of his touches came from the slot. So if you got T-Mac on the outside, you get Antonio Williams going in the inside, that could be exciting. He's got good short area quickness. He makes big catches in big moments. He can make the contested catch, and he runs with the ball after he catches it. He's got great yak. And Debo tells people, hey, I've coached a lot of receivers here. D-Hop, T. Higgins, Hunter Renfrow, Sammy Watkins. I mean, you think about all these great receivers. He says this kid right here, Antonio Williams, is very similar. And I think there's 2 guys that really got to come through for the Washington Commanders. I'm putting a lot on this rookie, Antonio Williams. Let's go, man. But most importantly, this free agent acquisition, Chig Okonkwo, this guy's a hell of a player. He's versatile. Look at all the places he lines up at. 38% of the time he lines up in line as a conventional tight end. 42% of the time he's in the slot. 12% he's all the way out here, and 8% he's in the backfield. They moved this guy around, man. And he had 4 catches, okay, of 40 yards or more. This guy can run after the catch. He's got 194 catches for over 2,000 yards. Tennessee's kind of a faceless team, but Washington stole a really good tight end. And I want to go back to this John Bates. He is a badass. He may not catch passes, but he can block. And Ben Sinnott, if you're listening to me, Ben, let's freaking go, man. Let's go. But they do have several guys on this team with big question marks. I mean, what are they going to do with Luke McCaffrey? He's going into his 3rd year now. He makes a big play this week. You don't see him for 3 more weeks. What's going to happen to Jalen Lane? Is he more than just a punt returner, or is he not? Is he going to become Antonio Freeman, the ex-Hokie who we had in Green Bay? And what about this Treylon Burks guy? He was a 1st-round pick of the Titans. He plays 8 games with the Commanders last year. Are any of these guys going to step up? Are they going to go out and sign Stephon Diggs? I mean, he played at Maryland. The guy had over 1,000 yards. What about this Brandon Ayuk guy? I see him on the channels. He does a lot of social media posts. Is he going to be available? He did play with Jaden Daniels at Arizona State. Wouldn't that be something? But with all this uncertainty at wide receiver, I go back to David Blau. Why would we play 3 receivers at a time if we only really have one proven badass, Terry McLaurin? Maybe we got to play 2 tight ends or 3 tight ends at a time. Think about it. Multiple tight end sets could be coming to a theater near you. All right, let's talk about the offensive line. Remember when they were great? They had the Hogs. You can still see Jacoby and Mark May and Bostic, all these great linemen, Jim Lachey. We could go on and on and on. When you look at this team right now, the left tackle is Laramie Tunsil, the ex-Houston Texan. He didn't have a great year last year. He was hurt the last 3 games, shoulder, oblique, but they just gave him a 2-year deal. And congratulations, Laramie Tunsil. You're the first offensive tackle I've heard of making over $30 million a year. That's how high they think of him. At left guard, it's going to be Chris Paul. Chris Paul's a young player. He wears number 75 out of Tulsa. Now, getting under the center is great. We talked about the stats. But who's the freaking center? Biotish is gone. He's in L.A. I believe the starting center is going to be Nick Algretti. Algretti's the ex-Kansas City Chief, Played left guard every single game in 2024, in and out of the lineup last year. He's only played center 172 snaps in his career, and he's 30 years old. He is the leader, though, of this Washington offensive line. I think the players love him. They rally around him. He'll be able to communicate, make all the calls. But don't forget that draft choice in the 6th round, Matt Golban out of Michigan State. Played 4 years at Wake Forest, transfers to Michigan State, plays center in East Lansing, and grades out as one of the top centers in college football. 6'4", 305. He's played left guard, right guard, and center. He's the perfect swing guard backup center to start the season. That's a good pick by Washington. At right guard, I think, is their best player, Sam Cosmi out of Texas. You know, he got hurt in that playoff game in 2024. Didn't really come around until the end of last season when you felt him at full strength. Man, if you watch Cosmi the last 6 weeks of the season, I don't think he gives up one pressure. This is a badass. He's athletic. He fits this scheme perfectly. I look for him to really take off because he's healthy again. And at right tackle, I know they drafted Josh Connerly in the 1st round last year out of Oregon. He started. He's the only commander to play 100% of the plays on offense, but he did have his problems. He saw Crosby. He saw Micah Parsons. He gave up 8 sacks, and he had 13 penalties, 7 holding calls, 6 false starts. He's got to clean up his play, and if he does, this could be a pretty damn good offensive line, and they do have some depth that I like. Remember, Brandon Coleman, number 74, is a good player. He's played a lot of football here. He's a talent. Trey Scott, number 73, he can play tight end in the jumbo sets. He's a good young lineman. And they still have Andrew Wiley, the ex-world champion from the Chiefs, who's been a starter. They have 8 pretty damn good linemen. But it's all going to come down, I think, to Jaden Daniels. He's sensational. And fortunately for Washington, they have one of the great backup quarterbacks in the game in Marcus Mariota. 12th year, ex-Heisman Trophy winner, one of my favorite players I ever coached. Hell's bells. He's still a dual threat, but not only is he a great mentor, he's a guy that can actually come in the game and kick your ass because he still has playmaking ability and talent. And then there's going to be a battle for that 3rd job. Are they going to keep 3 quarterbacks or put that guy on the practice squad? It's that Sam Hartman guy, number 15. Man, is he handsome. He is one good-looking guy. I wish I was him. And then they got my guy, Special K, Ethan Kaliakmanis. They'll go head-to-head and try to win that 3rd job. This is an exciting time for this Washington Commander offense. They got a good young offensive coordinator. They've got some real good competitive battles at some positions here. Keep an eye on that as this training camp unfolds. Okay, the Commanders on defense, they've got new leadership there as well. They brought in Durante Jones from the Minnesota Vikings. He'll be the new defensive coordinator. We'll get into him in just a second. Joe Witt was the defensive coordinator. Dan Quinn, the head coach, took over the play calling. And last year, it was a very, very hard defense to watch. 27th in scoring, 32nd in total defense, 30th against the run, 28th against the pass. At least they were consistent. But what happened? They had a lot of missed assignments. I mean, there were times that the coverage was blown. Guys were wide open down the field. Sometimes they didn't line up properly, and to be honest with you, the tackling wasn't very good. But you look at the issues, personnel was a big problem. I mean, Marshawn Lattimore comes over from New Orleans, and he wasn't the same Marshawn Lattimore. He was hurt. He was ineffective. Sainris still, 2nd-year player last year. He struggled. I think 10 touchdown passes, according to Pro Football Focus, went on him. Trey Amos, cornerback, played pretty good at times, struggled, then he got hurt, missed a lot of time. Both defensive ends, Dietrich Wise, Dorrance Armstrong, got hurt. So they had a lot of issues last year. Enter Durante Jones, new system, 3-4 operation. At least that's what Flores was in Minnesota when he was calling the shot. Expect a 3-4 defense in the base, 3 down linemen, 4 linebackers. At least that's what the Vikings did when Jones was there coaching the secondary. Minnesota did a great job on defense, particularly in the 2024 season. I mean, they had 24 interceptions, man, 18 by the defensive backs. They had 95 PBUs, led the league. Who was the secondary coach? Durante Jones. So I think there's a big reason why Dan Quinn targeted this young man to be the play caller. But what will they look like? Obviously, Dan Quinn's been a 4-3 guy, so they transitioned to a 3 down front. That's why they made multiple changes in the front 7. They also are going to play a lot of zone coverage. Last year, Minnesota was number 1 in the league in zone coverage. They might play multiple different kinds of coverages with zone, but they were number 1. They were 30th in the league in playing man coverage. Washington, on the flip side, was 12th in playing man coverage and 27th in playing zone. So the front goes from 4-3 to 3-4. Your coverage concepts change from man to zone. Right away, you feel the change. The other thing is, Minnesota, they will blitz your ass, man. 46.3% of the time, Minnesota heats you up. And if you watch Minnesota play Detroit on one of those holiday games, holy shit, I thought they had 12 guys on defense. They got after Detroit unlike I have never seen anybody. But Washington, they have not been a high-pressure team. So more zone coverage, more pressure, and you go from a 4 down front to a 3 down front. Those are significant changes. I think you're going to see new starters on all 3 levels of this defense. They got younger, they got new players, but did they get better? Everybody's saying they got better. Let's see them go prove it. Isn't that what's great about football? I go back to the turnovers. If this defense is better, they've got to take the ball away more. I mean, 10 turnovers from their defense last year. That's almost as bad as it is in football. They've only got 24 takeaways in the last 2 seasons. Only the Jets with 18 have less. Dan Quinn, man, his high energy style, poke the ball out, scoop it up and score. I mean, that's what got him this job. They've got to get back to taking the ball away, and I'm sure it's going to be a critical emphasis in training camp. Whatever scheme they run, whatever front, whatever coverage, they have got to eliminate the big plays. Last year, Washington was hammered 65 times with plus 10 runs. They gave up 13 pass plays of over 40 yards. That's impossible. Hell's bells, 136 yards per game after the catch. That just goes to show you pursuit angles and tackling is not up to speed. And they gave up an NFL worst 38.2 yards per drive. So think about the offense. When you do get the ball, you're at your own 4 fucking yard line. It's maddening, man. And then 30% of the drives against Washington last year went for touchdowns. Only the Cowboys were worse than Washington. That's what I like about this Durante Jones and this scheme he's bringing in from Minnesota. The results speak for themselves, and they don't give up big plays in Minnesota. So I think there's a philosophy and there's going to be some drills that prohibit a lot of these explosive plays from happening. I'm hoping the fever catches on in Washington. This guy, Durante Jones, he was a defensive coordinator 1 year at LSU. Isolate this guy for a second. He's been in the league since 2016, not just at Minnesota. He's been with Vance Joseph, defensive coordinator of the Broncos, Marvin Lewis, Mike Zimmer, and he's been with Flores. So you know this guy's got a playbook this thick of blitzes. And when they blitz, it's not man coverage all the time. Sometimes they roll up over here, they trap over here. It's chaotic disguises. They do a great job. But let's talk about the changes on all 3 levels. The front, the changes start inside. Yes, they still have Daron Payne, who's in the last year of his contract. Payne wears number 94, the former first rounder out of Alabama. This guy has some versatility. He can play on the nose because he's strong enough. He's big enough to play defensive end in the 3 down front, and he still has the twitch and the quickness to be a 3 technique and a disruptive pass rusher. The big acquisition is Tim Settle. Settle was drafted by Washington in the 5th round. He left, went to Houston and played pretty good. They just gave him a 3-year, $24 million deal. Settle played good last year in Houston, man. He's got 124 career games, 29 starts, surprising 15 career sacks. I mean, he has some range for a big guy. Last year he had 15 tackles, a sack, but this guy's an upgrade in the inside of this defense. The disappointment has been Kinlaw, the big defensive lineman they brought in from the New York Jets. You know, Kinlaw was that #1 pick Adam Peters drafted with the 49ers. He comes over, he gets 3 years for $45 million. And Kinlaw was a disappointment, man. I mean, he had no sacks last year, 3 quarterback hits, and he missed 12 tackles. So Kinlaw has been a disappointment. They got to get more out of him. He is a monster. If he and Settle can come through, that's a huge deal for this defense. They also signed Charles Omenihu. Charles Omenihu, he's now on his 4th football team. He's had some injuries the last couple years, but he does have some pass rush. He's got 23 career sacks. He's just got to stay healthy and out on the grass. They also have Jerzon Newton. Keep an eye on number 95, Newton, former 2nd-round pick out of Illinois. He had 5 sacks last year. So they do have some depth, some interesting players. They need Payne to be a pain in the ass again, like he was when he came into the Washington locker room. They need Kinlaw to really break out in Washington. And they need Settle, Omenihu, and they desperately need Newton to kick some ass this year. The front is very important. What really has to pay off are these edge rushers. They put a lot of money into Odafe Oweh, who was a hell of a player, man, for the Baltimore Ravens a couple years ago. He has 10 sacks. He's 6'5", former #1 pick out of Penn State. He falls out of favor. His play time goes down. They trade him to the LA Chargers last year at midseason. He has 7.5 sacks. And if you watch him in the playoff game against New England, he has 3 sacks and 2 forced fumbles. So they go out and give him $100 million, 4-year contract, and he's going to be wearing number 98. This guy is critical. Remember, Von Miller, who had 9 sacks, is gone. Odafe Oweh, 98, has got to play big for Washington. On the other side, they went out and got K'Lavon Chaisson. That's my favorite name in the league right now. K'Lavon Chaisson. Sounds like a great player. Just had 10 sacks in his first 5 years. Former #1 pick with Jacksonville. Goes and revives his career with the Raiders. He has 7.5 sacks last year with the New England Patriots. They gave him a 1-year, $12 million contract. Chaisson and Oweh, 2 big additions for this team. And if they can get Dorrance Armstrong healthy, let me tell you, number 92 Armstrong, he got hurt against Dallas in week 7. Shit, he had 5.5 sacks. He was off to a career year. And if they can get Dietrich Wise back from that quad injury, they got 4 guys now playing on the edge that are pretty damn good. So I like the additions that they made on the front. But where I really get excited is at inside linebacker. I mean, they go out in the first round and they draft Sonny Styles out of Ohio State. Listen to these measurables. How about being 6'5", 240, running 4.46? How about a 43.5-inch vertical? Does that sound good to you, Jake? Yep. You're damn right it does. His wingspan is 81 inches, so he has great length to cover tight ends. Some of these big tight ends, they reach for the ball. Sonny Styles is like, kabam! Incomplete. The guy played safety at Ohio State when he started his career. Then he comes down, plays 42 games at linebacker. His dad won a Super Bowl as a player with the Rams. His brother is playing for the Saints. This is a football family. And he was coached by James Laurinaitis at Ohio State. So the mental part of the game is very, very sharp. And this guy doesn't like football. He loves it. And if you're going to replace Bobby freaking Wagner, one of the top 5 or 6 badasses I have seen play in my life, you might as well go get a guy who has all the criteria to be just like him. This is really a cool guy to watch. He's going to be wearing number 52. I think this guy has a real huge upside. The other guy is Leo Chenal. Chenal played for Kansas City. And if you know who Zach Bond is kicking ass for Philadelphia. He came out of nowhere. He's a Wisconsin Badger. He's kind of in, he's kind of in the background in New Orleans. He gets in the right scheme at the right time and goes crazy. All pro. Chenal, another Wisconsin Badger. All he does last year is play about 55% of the snaps, 54 tackles, 2 sacks, an unbelievable interception against the Ravens. I think Chenal is a badass. I really believe Chenal and Styles upgrade the athleticism. It'll really help them eliminate some of these big runs, and it's really going to help them in coverage. This is going to be exciting. They still have Frankie Louvu. He's going to be 30 years old in September. Frankie Louvu, he did it all for Washington, probably did too much. They had him playing defensive end, inside linebacker. He played 97% of the plays. Everybody got critical because he missed some tackles, struggled a little bit in coverage. But in this new scheme, blitzing, playing zone coverage, playing downhill, they have 3 damn good linebackers. And don't forget, Jordan McGee, number 58, he's coming on as a young linebacker. He played 35% of the snaps and had over 50 tackles. So they do have some depth, and they do have a scheme that's very aggressive that fits this group. But the area they have the most to prove to me is in their secondary. I'm really excited, as I said earlier, with the addition of Nick Cross. I mean, this guy's not fast. He's really fast. He runs 4.3. He can play nickel. He can play free or strong. He's good in the post. He is the perfect, versatile safety that Coach Jones needs. I mean, think about Minnesota, what they did with Harrison Smith. He's on the line of scrimmage. He's dime linebacker. He's a big nickel. He's out there. You got to have a safety who can do a lot. And Nick Cross is that guy. They still have Jeremy Reeves, I think, will back up Cross. Reeves was a special teams player. He got thrust into the lineup. He wears number 35. Shit, he makes 81 tackles, has 7 PBUs. There was some inconsistency and some breakdowns, but he's got some experience now, and he's got a really good guy to watch in Nick Cross. The other safety, I think they're hoping it will be Will Harris. Will Harris came over from New Orleans last year to take over for Jeremy Chin, and unfortunately he got hurt breaking his leg in week 3. That was a big loss for the Washington Commanders. But if they get Will Harris back, playing to his level that he's capable of playing, that's a huge upgrade from where it was last season. The big mystery is what happens to Quan Martin, number 20. Here's a former second-round draft choice that was benched a couple times last year. Statistically, yeah, he's second on the team with 95 tackles. But his play was so up and down, I think Washington lost confidence in him. But when you listen to Coach Durante Jones talk about Quan Martin, he's saying, I don't know what he is yet. Is he a big nickel? Is he a safety? Is he a corner? So I think they're in a position right now to consider playing that big nickel, that 3 safety at a time look that they played a lot of in Minnesota. Perhaps Martin becomes a big nickel corner. I know he's going to compete there for playing time, but the safety play has got to get much better. And at corner, can second-year man Trey Amos come back from his injury? He was playing pretty good at times, but in week 11, he fractured that fibia, and we hope he's ready to go for the regular season. He's 6'1", 193, played at 3 different colleges. We know that. But look at his QBR against them. It was 112. He gave up some big plays. He missed some tackles. He has talent, size, and speed, and they are very confident in him. But Amos, he has got to get healthy and stay healthy and can't miss time during training camp. The other corner, I think there's going to be a real battle. Remember, they signed Akello Witherspoon, the ex-LA Ram, ex-San Francisco 49er. I think he's the dark horse, at least in my book. This guy can really play. He started 6 games for the Rams last year until he hurt that scapula, but he's got 13 career picks in 96 games. Amos and Witherspoon would give Washington 2 big corners that have coverage ability. And then Mike Sainristil, second-round pick out of Michigan, now enters his 3rd season. Played very well as a rookie, but last year he really had peaks and valleys. He led the team with 4 interceptions. He made some nice tackles. He has versatility to go inside or out, but because of injuries, Sainristil, who was really brought here to be the nickel, has had to go outside over 60% of the time. And if you're interested in Pro Football Focus, Sainristil gave up 10 touchdowns last year. So he's got to play a lot better. And where is he going to play? Is he going to play right corner? Is he going to compete with Witherspoon? Is he going to go inside and compete to be the nickel? And what happens to Amik Robertson? We signed him from Detroit. He started 10 games a year ago. Robertson's an ex-Raider, 52 tackles, 12 PBUs, but he gave up some touchdown passes on double moves last year. But Robertson and Sainristil are nickels. Are we going to play him outside and inside? What is Quan Martin, a safety or a nickel? Who the hell is the nickel is what I'm saying. I don't know. A lot of questions in this Washington Commanders secondary. On paper, much better up front. Love the two linebackers, and I love Nick Cross. But after that, we got to find out. And I know quarterbacks are licking their chops, and they can't wait to see. Yeah, I think this Washington defense is going to be better. Keep an eye on Spoon at corner, Cross at safety, the two edge rushers, Owe and Chason, the two inside linebackers, Chenal and Sonny Styles, and Tim Settle up front. They could be better, but I still think they're going to finish third. I think the Giants are going to pull up the rear, although both those teams will be slightly better. I like Philly to win the East. I like Dallas as a playoff team and a dark horse to do great things. But the East is going to be a lot more competitive and a lot more complete than it was last year. Well, we'll see in a couple weeks. We're going to get working here on the NFC West, the defending champion Seattle Seahawks, the Rams, the 49ers, 3 playoff teams, and a brand new look in Arizona. See you then.